Murda. Welcome. Hey, how's everybody doing? Boy, it is our Sunday live stream where we talk about things other than wrestling. But that being said, as of about 6 o'clock, I didn't really have any ideas about what I wanted to do. I told everybody in the Discord I didn't have any plans. I was going to go live at 8 o'clock, but I didn't have any plans. So some things were kind of punched around in my head, but it was because mostly I had not watched Creed 3 yet. And to be quite honest, I had no interest in seeing Creed 3. But then I did see it, and I remembered that I had some stuff in my notes page from the first two Creed movies. So I said, we need to look into the Creed films. Maybe not do a digging into where I look at interviews and all that kind of stuff, but basically a character analysis of the Creed trilogy. And so it kind of fell backwards into my hands. I had to take some time to watch the movie, and I generally liked it. Generally thought the Creed movie, I think it was the best one of the three. Um, and I actually, this is going to be a completely new phenomenon because not only did I not have any ideas before 7 o'clock, well 5 o'clock, but I also have my almost entire thing recorded. I mean, well, not recorded, but written. So I'm actually going to be reading my analysis of the first two Creed movies going into the third one. So we're going to talk about all three movies at one time and see how long that takes us. What is the Discord link? Well, for starters, hey, what's up, King Shady? I am going to put the Discord link in the community section, or I'll put it in the description, one of the two. But I continuously forget that I have a Discord server, and I forget how to link people to the Discord server. I also don't mention it that often, which I probably should mention it more than I do. I legitimately keep forgetting that I even have one. One time I actually deleted Discord and like just got rid of the app, and then it was like gone for like 3 or 4 days, and I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So then I went and looked, and I was like, oh, I still got it. Okay, cool. So I'll actually find a way to find the link, and I'll post it in the description, or I'll post it in the community tab, or maybe somebody who is in the Discord can share it if they can. Uh, Feel free. Everybody's feel free to pop on over in the Discord. We often are talking like wrestling and stuff. Sometimes things other than wrestling. We don't always talk about WWE and stuff like that. We are almost always talking about different things. So, pop on over if you guys want to. I'll find the link and post it somewhere so that you guys can be a part of it. I got only 14 people are in it. But today we're going to be talking about the Creed films, all three Creed films. Now, usually when I do a video, I am off the cuff, like, just saw it. Maybe I have some notes, but now I actually have like a prepared statement, which is like a very rare thing on this channel. You could probably count on if you're a old school person on this channel. This channel is like 2 or 3 years old. If you are older school on this channel, you probably realize that I've probably put out a grand total of 3 or 4 videos total in which I have come out and did notes, like actually read a statement. I think one of the videos I actually did a statement on was an essay I wrote about ECW. No, it was about 1998. And I think that was the last time I did it. People usually like my videos with me off the cuff being jokey and stuff, rather than me coming up with a prepared essay before we go into it. So I typically kind of just abandoned the concept. But let's not get into it. I'm still looking. Da, 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 da. I'm still going to post a link if I can. So we'll see. But we're gonna do uh, the prepared statement. All right. So I want to pause, of course, to give people an opportunity to respond to some of the things that I've said. But generally speaking, this is going to be me reading from my notes page. Okay. Don't feel screwed that I was. That this is actually more work than me than what I usually do. And it's not because I like to read movies too much. It's just that I had an idea in my mind when I first started doing this over a year ago. Like this is how long this. That's how old my phone is, and that's how long I've had this stuff in my notes page, in my my notes. So all right. So it says a little discussion on Creed 2015. Creed is the legend of Korra of the Rocky franchise. The main character is an inversion of the original protagonist. Adonis Creed has a tough childhood, growing up in group homes and dealing with anger issues. He is saved miraculously by his father's wife, though he was conceived during an affair. That brings him into the story of who Apollo Creed was. Adonis becomes infatuated with his dad. He decides he wants to box, so he quits his high-paying financial job to move to Los Angeles, from Los Angeles to Philadelphia to learn how to fight from Rocky. Adonis' struggle is internal. He was viewed as a mistake, quote unquote, and a product of Apollo's weaker moments. He has anger issues, which leads him to lashing out and being insecure in himself. On top of that, once it's acknowledged that he's Apollo's son, the pressure of the legacy falls on him. All of this makes for great character stuff. And it's a complete inversion of Rocky, who fights because it's the only thing he's good at. He lacks formal education, but has deep wisdom and humanity. Not to go into too much detail of the first film, but it tried to mesh the original Rocky and update it. It attempted to build on the legacy. It was a good try, but the characterization of Adonis Creed isn't good enough. So I'm going to critique Adonis Creed, which was the original idea of this statement, as I was going to critique the Creed films because I really didn't like the first one. I was kind of agitated about the first one. So it says, how do you fix it? He says, I say Adonis stays poor, but is told by his birth mother who his dad was. Growing up, he learns from others about how great his dad was, seeks to see if some of that same stuff is inside of him. Nobody believes him when he says his father is Apollo Creed, and he ruins the legacy by not being a particularly good fighter. Rocky hears about baby Creed and investigates, finds out who Adonis' mother is, and confirms he is Apollo's son. Rocky then brings him back to Philly to train him in the memory of Apollo. The daddy, legacy, anger issues all remain. But Adonis is like Rocky in so much as he isn't formally educated. He fights because it's all he's ever known to do. He thinks it's what he's supposed to do, being the son of Apollo. In Philly, however, he finds a new life, new purpose through meeting Bianca, and begins questioning if he even wants to fight. Fighting has to be something he chooses, which is a great thing about the movie. But he has to be tempted to go in another direction. We didn't see anything of his corporate life or why he hates it so much. Fighting comes across like a calling rather than a choice in the film. The difference between a calling and a choice is it's a little bit of a spiritual thing, to be honest. If you're called to do something, you might actually resist it. That's kind of the hero's journey. And you'll hear about this kind of thing in church a lot. You know, what is your calling? What is the thing that you're good at, but you're resisting actually doing it? I probably have a couple of those things that people have said to me, like, you should be yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, you know, and that's kind of a recurring thing with average people, is that you guys come across, you talk to somebody and you say, man, you should be a yada, yada, yada. You're so good at blah, 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 blah. And you're kind of like, I don't know about that. But it's, it's like God whispering, if you believe in that kind of thing, that telling you what direction you should go to in your life. So what I'm saying is that boxing being a calling for him is good. It's an interesting thing, but it's something he definitely has to choose to do. And it's always better for your hero to make an active decision in your story. So being active is very important. Men don't particularly like stories where the character is passively involved. So it says, I continue. In my version, he would choose to fight. The reasoning, he's actually good at it. His losses would be due to being improperly trained in a hood gym where nobody actually made it, unfocused, street life as a distraction, angry due to his daddy issues. But seeing Bianca struggle to make it as a singer, failing time and time again, is a parallel to his own situation. She doesn't give up on her dreams and what she sees as her calling, so why would he? He dedicates himself to boxing again, cue the chicken chase and training montages. Creed 2, 2018, opens up with Adonis winning the World Heavyweight title. It's anticlimactic. We didn't get a chance to see Adonis bounce back. We are robbed of watching the struggle to get another title fight. We are then introduced to the son of Ivan Drago, who serves as our antagonist for the film. Ivan details to Rocky that losing in their fight cost him everything. He sees vengeance and living vicariously through his son. The young Drago is merely a puppet in his dad's scheme to get revenge on Rocky. For Adonis, this is, of course, an opportunity to humiliate the man who killed his father. For Rocky, this is a terrible wound left open. Rocky refuses to train Adonis for the Drago fight. This puts Rocky in the same position as Mickey in Rocky 3. Rocky doesn't believe in Adonis, thinks that the Drago fight is a bad idea. Bianca doesn't like it either. Adonis, bullheaded, takes the fight with the support of Rocky, without the support of Rocky or his fiance, and is ruined by Victor Drago, losing to a hungrier, more vicious opponent, just as Rocky did in Rocky 3. Adonis finds himself in the position as his father in Rocky 4. He's outmatched, pride is kicking in, and despite the beating he's taken, he won't quit. Rocky, watching the fight from home, wants the fight stopped. Adonis is brutally KO'd. At this point, it's clear Rocky 2 is mixing elements of Rocky 3 and 4. Did I say Creed 2 is mixing the elements of Rocky 3 and 4. Ivan Drago gets his vengeance as his son wins the world title from Creed. Now we go in a new direction, right? Well, Victor Drago is DQ'd. So despite the thorough beating Adonis took, he's still the champion. Now Drago pursues the title. He's gained a symbolic victory and restored his family honor and prestige. At this point, Victor's character deepens. He hates his mother and all the false friends who now support him and his father now. He resents the attention. The old Drago line rings true. The old Drake line rings true. You weren't shooting with me in the gym. Rocky tries to make amends with Adonis, feeling guilty for letting this happen, and is rejected by Adonis. From here, we see the outcome of Adonis' battle: pissing blood, pain medication, self-doubt. Adonis' coaches want to dodge Drago to defend his title against, quote, tune-ups. Adonis doesn't even entertain this. Adonis' outside the ring life forces him to mature. Fatherhood humbles him and motivates him. Adonis is forced to reconnect with Rocky and Bianca to find his inner, quote, eye of the tiger. The final fight sees Victor saved by his father, who realizes he cared more about his son than the admiration of others, by throwing in the towel. Ivan's change is triggered by his wife and the elites leaving the arena while Victor struggled. He realized his son was right all along. Creed survives. He fights through his doubt and slays the dragon of his past. Rocky attempts to do the same by visiting his estranged son. Ivan continues to train with his son, apparently without the same pressure applied. The bridging of generations, soothing of old wounds, and growth and maturity made Creed 2 a fine film. The Creed films fail to reach the heights of the Rocky movies, but is deeply informed by them. But as I said at the beginning, Adonis is an inversion of Rocky. Adonis deals with the expectations of being the son of a great champion, but not having access to that man. Rocky was a chump. Nobody expected to reach the heights that he did. Rocky was an underdog story. Creed is a chosen one story. So that's kind of the end of the original statements before I get into Rocky 3. Creed 3. I'm going to really kind of go downhill with that. But that's kind of how I felt watching the first two Creed movies, is that you get that Adonis has all of these expectations dumped on him once everybody finds out that he's the son of Apollo Creed. And you kind of feel bad for him because he is struggling with his inner demons and all this sort of stuff. But now he's got to deal with the pressure that comes with being in the same business as his father. And it sounded like I didn't like those two movies, but I do remember actually enjoying them a little bit. I never watched either one of them twice, so maybe I didn't like them that much. But I never watched either movie twice. Okay, so now let's talk about Creed 3. So it says, Enter Creed 3, 2022. a reconnection with Adonis's roots and fleshing out of his backstory. Diamond Dame is Adonis's OG, his protector and mentor, but most importantly, a welcome addition to the Rocky franchise, despite the feeling that we've been here before. Clubber Lang, Rocky 3, is rugged, violent, but most importantly, hungry. Hunger is a deep theme in the Rocky franchise, the will to win, as coined by Jim Ross of pro wrestling fame. The spirit of Clubber Lang is introduced into the Creed franchise by Diamond Dame. Dame is an ex-con from the streets, one who dreamed since his teen years of being heavyweight champion, a dream he watched Adonis complete from a jail cell. Once freed, Dame set focus slowly on achieving his dream. The same skill, desire, and raw nerve that led Dame to success in the streets leads to success when he gets out. Dame is an underdog story, much like Rocky. He's too old and thought washed up from his amateur days. He's a story where his own streak-style ruthlessness replaces Rocky's toughness or resourcefulness. Dame creates an opportunity where none existed. Using a prison buddy to attack heavyweight champion Felix Chavez's opponent, Dame applies guilt and pressure to Adonis to get the spot for himself. Adonis aids his friend, thinking he's the same guy he was when they were kids. The problem is, he is. Dame is still the same cutthroat, cocky, manipulative teenager trapped in an adult body. The schism between Adonis and Dame is more than over just boxing. It's over Adonis feeling shame and cutting Dame out of his life. The relationship between the two is brotherly, one Adonis cherishes. He sees Dame, literally in some parts, as the kid he loved. Dame also sees Adonis as the same kid, the same one he had contempt for, the one who abandoned him, the one who broke code and didn't look out for him when he looked out for him. Adonis has his mother to blame for this schism, and at times he does so, but ultimately he realizes it was for the best. His success is because he left negative influences like Dame in the past. Adonis has to learn to let go of the past in order to move forward. Dame is the past. Their relationship is the past. Dame's mentality, attitude are no longer welcome. It was time for Adonis to finally conquer his past. The lack of a father figure, the streets that raised him, his fears and abuse. In defeating Dame, he closed an important chapter of his life. In the closing, Dame absolved Adonis of any blame or wrongdoing, saying we were just kids. They realized mistakes were made and that for any relationship to emerge from their fight, it had to be new. It cannot be rooted in old grudges, desires, or mentalities. Dame is forced to grow up and accept that Adonis has moved on. No longer his young boy, but a man on his own. This gives Adonis the okay to finally embrace the future over the past. Adonis' Creed is the chosen one, but his accolades are actually earned. Creed 3 is the first Rocky franchise film without Rocky. Are you surprised a theme of the film is to move on from the past? Rocky is gone. It's Creed's time. And soon he will be gone, replaced by his deaf daughter. No doubt. So that's the end of that statement. I didn't actually finish it because 8 o'clock came. So I didn't get to finish the statement. But I think that perfectly encapsulates my understanding of Creed 3. I'm not going to go blow by blow through the movie. But if you watch it, I think you will enjoy it. The movie in and of itself is very well shot, I think. I think it was also very well thought through. Diamond Dame is a strange mixture of Clubber Lang with Bernard Hopkins, and Sonny Liston. Those old grizzled fighters who have, spent time in jail, which is like most fighters in the 80s and 90s. They were guys who went to prison and basically they live in what Deion Sanders talked about. They come from broken homes. They come from the streets. Literally, they're pulling from somewhere desperate. They have iron jaws and they train like any loss, any misstep is going back to the block, And it's crazy that so many people got upset at Deion Sanders for saying what he said about, football players, defensive tackles and stuff like that, when it's literally true in MMA and in boxing and in the NBA too. The worse the situation that you come from, the more gritty you are, the hungrier you are. And so it's important when you're writing a character like that, it's an important piece of the character. Diamond Dame coming fresh from prison and wanting a title shot, is ludicrous. And I'm glad that in the story that they actually acknowledged how ludicrous it is. Like, that doesn't happen, you know. But it showed you how dedicated Dane was because he made it happen. He had to pull some strings in order to get it to happen. He had to, cut some corners for it to happen, but he made it happen for him. And you're left with the idea that he wanted to be champion more than he wanted to be friends, more than he wanted people to respect him. He wanted to be world champion. He wanted to be world champion more than he wanted to even be a fighter, really. Because you see, he didn't really learn too much about boxing. He was fighting dirty throughout his fight with Felix Chavez. He threw an elbow. He punched him in the arm. I think he even punched him in the leg one time. It was dirty boxing, very dirty boxing. But that was sort of a way of really informing the Diamond Dane character. And I really enjoyed the writing of him and how he was played by Jonathan Majors. And to be quite honest, Jonathan Majors is the reason why I didn't really want to see the movie. I was just I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy. Um, he's a Hollywood weirdo, but I generally thought the film was fantastic. There were some things I think they could have cut out, like um, or some things that were kind of glaring. And then if I wanted to nitpick, I would say, look at all the feminine energy in this movie. Like Adonis has no male role models except Duke. Duke is the only male in this movie. This is a movie about fighting. And yet there's the mom character, the daughter character, and the wife. They're just always around. Felix Chavez has his mom as his manager. It comes across as being very ridiculous. Like the abundance of feminine energy in an action boxing movie, for guys is kind of ridiculous. You know, but that would be me just being a little extra, because at least these characters, the feminine characters, they open up an opportunity for Adonis to grow. His wife is somebody he can sit down and talk to. She could be like a therapist almost. His mother made a decision without him knowing, and even though he was bitter at her for making that decision, it turned out to be the right decision in the long term. So, and she made his success possible. Which you could take the piss out of it for that by saying, look, he wouldn't have been nothing if his mom hadn't done this or this. But isn't that what parents do? Your parents step in and through their guidance, even if it's just something you don't see, they help you achieve success. Which is again interesting because due to what you see on TV, recently about like Colin Kaepernick, how he talks about his parents, the people who raised him, and now he's the reason why he's in the NFL is because of those people, and he goes on TV and calling them racist and everything. So it was an interesting character work there. With Dane being his male mentor, but being sort of a corrupt person. And it's very interesting. Hop Creed 3 doesn't acknowledge where Rocky is. It's the elephant in the room. Why wouldn't Rocky be at Creed's big fight, not even watching at home? That is very, very good point. A very good point. The crazy thing is, if you knew Rocky wasn't going to be in it, you didn't ask that question. But if you didn't know, then you probably were thinking that, like, where's Rocky? You probably were thinking, okay, Rocky's going to come in and train him. Maybe Rocky's going to get put in the Mickey position again. They didn't mention that Rocky was dead. They didn't say Rocky was gone. They didn't say we want to do this one without Rocky. Nothing. It's just kind of like they just told the story and didn't acknowledge that Rocky even existed. I think they mentioned his name once or twice in the movie, but it was kind of in passing. Apollo Creed is barely mentioned in this movie either. So it's kind of like I think Drago's son was one of the trainers, I think. So I think that was the only really link to the other movies. So they kind of give you a hard break, but the story is written so well and it's played out pretty well, even though it's unrealistic. And I think that people who know boxing have looked and said, man, like nobody will allow a guy with no pro fights, none, to get to fight the heavyweight champion, no matter what the situation, you know. But then you think about it, like Rocky Balboa was a completely ridiculous story too, because Apollo Creed literally picked Rocky out of because he liked his name or something like that, like really out of a hat. He just kind of said, "Yeah, Italian stallion," and that was it, you know. And Rocky was presented with this opportunity, and well, in this situation, Dame wants to fight, you know, but he also wants to achieve that dream. Adonis sees it as him helping a friend, like let's put him in the gym, get him some reps, maybe get him a fight here and there, put some money in his pocket. He'll probably never be world champion, but he can make a living fighting. But that's not what Dame wanted to do. So, but yeah, you're right. Rocky not being acknowledged at all in the film, not even a picture of him really, was an interesting choice. A very interesting choice. But I don't see how they could have done it any other way. You know, what else could they possibly have done? You're dealing with a character who pretty much is the franchise. But like I said, when it was over, you get the idea that we're moving on. This was probably going to be the last Creed film. I mean, they even had the audacity in the Creed movie to say, in the build up to the Damon Dash fight, that Adonis was washed up, he was old and beat up, and all this kind of stuff. And you know, I took it as okay, he's got years and years of fighting under his belt. You know, it's not the same thing. But we're still in a situation where we had 6 Rocky movies. You know, like we only going to get 3 Creed films. But at the end of the day, though, we did complete, I think, Adonis Creed's story arc. You know, he started out with as a young man struggling with his past and where he came from and all this kind of stuff, and who his father is, and dealing with the anger of not knowing who his father is and not having any connection to him and all that kind of stuff. He, you know, is dealing with that. And here in this movie, he kind of becomes full circle because Dame is the closest thing he has to a father, sort of father figure, even though he's more of a big brother. But that was the closest father figure he had next to Rocky. And since Rocky isn't in this movie, he's replaced a little bit with Dame. So you see a lot of the flashbacks of, you know, Dame showing him stuff and, you know, them bantering with each other and Dame having his back and everything. And you get the idea that what they were trying to do was move away from anybody else that was supposed to be in the franchise to be a sort of father figure, role model for Adonis, and trying to push that onto Dame because it's actually more convenient to do. And it actually made Dame a better character because when he comes out, he feels like he's being betrayed by Adonis, who never responded to any of his letters, never talked to him or anything like that, and then tried to give him a handout. You know, you kind of get the feeling like, yeah, I see why he would be upset, you know? So that makes sense, you know? Yes, we know Stallone didn't want to do Creed 3. Stallone doesn't want to do the Rocky films anymore. I think because he won't get they refuse to give him ownership of the Rocky movies. He wanted ownership of the Rocky films, and they won't give him to him. So he said he's not going to do anything more with it. But it worked out because Michael B. Jordan did a really good job. I think he both wrote and directed Creed. He did a good job. He nailed it. You know, I think he really understood the character. He understood where the character was coming from, what the character was doing. And I'm sure him having such a hands-on aspect to the character really helped. You know, it really helped. And it works when you have a continuity. And that's the one good thing that Rocky and now Creed has, is that it has a continuity. The people playing the characters know the characters, know what the character would do and wouldn't do, how the character would react, how the character wouldn't react. The scene where Adonis finds out that he was hoodwinked into giving Dame that title spot, and he decides he's going to go walk right up to Dame and get in his face. Well, that's something he would have done in the first movie. It's, you know, it's something that the character would do, even though it's kind of stupid. It's something that the character would do. And because Adonis Creed still has that chip on his shoulder, It's a lack of respect. He really doesn't respond well to that lack of respect stuff. It's a horse that he has, he's still riding it. So you get the idea that he understood the character, and he understood what the character's issue was. And the character's issue was 100% him dealing with his past. So they stuck with that. So that really works out. Um, I think I've mentioned this before, but I've been listening to these the Truth About Hip Hop joints from G. Craig Lewis. Just been listening to him at work, and number 10 is probably my favorite. It's called Pop Life, and it's a discussion about fatherlessness and the breakup of the family and its effect on young boys. And he shows a lot of really good examples of what happened when you break God's order, of God, father, mother, children, and you sort of start just doing whatever you want with that thing. What's the outcome? And it's young boys not having father figures, being raised by the street, essentially, being raised by people who are slightly older than they are. And this movie really taps into that. Like a lot of the stuff that's been going on, to double back to Colin Kaepernick, is the same thing. You know, this guy who has no sense of self because he doesn't have any relationship with his real father or his real mother, deeply confused, gets his role model becomes Allen Iverson, a basketball player, not his parents, but Allen Iverson, a basketball player. So he wants to get cornrows because Allen Iverson's got cornrows. And so he wants to look like that, but his parents step in and say, no, that's, you look like a thug. And for a long time, especially back then, because this would have been 2001, 2002, that's how even black colleges saw dreadlocks and cornrows on men. They saw it as, you look like a thug. It's unprofessional. So, not to go too deeply into the Colin Kaepernick thing, but you get the idea that Colin Kaepernick was a young man who had no father figure. He was a half black kid being raised by white people. He wanted to get in, quote unquote, in touch with his blackness. And much like a black woman, the only way for him to feel black is by doing things with his hair. you know, he gets in touch with his blackness through his hair, literally through his roots. And it's an interesting thing to sit down and really analyze when you really kind of look at it. You have Adonis Creed who doesn't have any relationship with his father, and the streets raised him. The person who looked out for him was Adonis. Well, not I mean was Dame, and then Dame got taken away. The cops took Dame away, and he fell into the arms of his stepmother, who raised him right, gave him all the opportunities or whatever. And then he finds another role model in Rocky, and that actually leads him to finding his path in life and being where he is at this point in the film is because he finally found some vestiges of his father figure in Rocky Balboa, who was the best friend of his dad. So he actually got to learn a little bit about his dad, his actual father, but he also got to be fathered a little bit. And that's why, it was nice, it was necessary, rather, for me to mention how much feminine energy is in this movie. There's no masculine energy to push Adonis towards behaving a certain way. It would have been nice if there would have been a coach there or somebody to tell him this is how you handle a situation like this Dame guy. Like they had Duke there, but Duke was more of he's a problem, he's trouble, get away from that guy. You don't owe him anything. He wasn't trying to tell him how to handle this situation, what you should do, that it's time to let the past go. So it came not as a lecture, a masculine confrontation, but through a therapy session with his wife while he's, almost weeping or whatever. And I'm not going to take a shot at it because that's just kind of how dudes are today. That's just how our sons are learning how to deal with their situations as they're sitting on couches with girlfriends and wives and weeping, and then they put their arm around them and, oh baby, it's going to be all right, you know and that, for better or worse, because sometimes that kind of thing can be weaponized against you when you're a guy. The sort of sadness, who you were, kind of thing can be weaponized against you. But this is an idealized movie where Bianca's an idealized female character to a degree, and while she is nosy and asking 100 questions about this Leon situation, um, at least, at the very least, she is a suitable partner in a situation where he's going through almost a mental breakdown, as he can't separate now from then. He can't break up that guilt. He still feels like he owes Dame something. And even when he agrees to fight Dame, he still doesn't really want to fight him. He's goaded into fighting him because, again, that's something that would happen with Adonis Creed, because he's very proud and he's very hot tempered. So it was easy for Dame to get him into the fight, but the problem became, once he was in the fight, he had to get his mind right. Once his mind was right, Dame couldn't beat him. So I did like that, but I would have liked for more masculine energy in these movies, and too many female managers and female trainers. And one of his sparring partners, not sparring partner, but I think one of the coaches was female and all that kind of stuff. You're like, it's an abundance of female energy in this movie, and a movie that really didn't need it, if we're being honest. And when you look at it from the Rocky perspective, there wasn't that many females at all in the Rocky movies. Like there wasn't. Adrian was the only female character outside of, I think, Apollo's wife that had any lines. There weren't any female coaches. There weren't any female, the husbands and the wives and all that. Nah, it wasn't too much of that. Well, I guess in Rocky 4, Drago's wife, I guess, was an important part of the movie. But outside of very few characters, there wasn't that many. So it was interesting, and it also felt like it was one of those diversity films where they had to dip a little bit of everything in there. There was a guy with a turban doing the ring announcing. The daughter is deaf. Like it's like okay. People who speak Spanish in the movie. Gotta have a little bit of everything, right? Because heavens to Betsy, somebody might get left out. I'm surprised they didn't put some kind of some Asian in there somewhere. Well, I guess that's the guy with the turban who's supposed to be like the Asian representation. Interestingly enough, for you wrestling fans, Ty Grisham was in this movie. The old backstage guy for WWE. I don't know what happened to Ty Grisham. Like, I don't know where he went. I don't think he went to another wrestling promotion, but he was like the commentator in the initial part of the movie. So that was fun. It was nice. A nice little Easter egg seeing him in this movie. Also, there's a lot of product placement. The ESPN, DAZN, Adonis Creed, heavyweight champion of the world, fighting on DAZN. Get out of here. Get out of it. Beat it. All right. Just beat it. Beat it. Beat it. So as I was watching the movie, I kept coming back to Bernard Hopkins. And I kept saying, like, this Diamond Dame character just reminds me so much of Bernard Hopkins. And of course, it comes to a point where it's like, okay, it wasn't not just Bernard Hopkins, it's also Sonny Liston. But it made me look up Bernard Hopkins and his situation. So I kind of want to get into that a little bit. So Bernard Hopkins talks about how prison gave him discipline. And I think this is very important because when you are a young boy, especially one without parents, as we've been talking about here, the discipline has to come from somewhere, right? Boys work so well in disciplined, orderly situations, but it has to come from somewhere. It either comes from your father, or it comes from jail, or it comes from the military. That's the only place that you can really get structure as a young boy. Either you're going to get it at home, where your dad has rules and you're going to stick to those rules, and those help you avoid going to jail, or it makes you fit to go to the military, or you go to jail and then that order is forced upon you, or you go to the military and that order is forced upon you. But boys and men respond very, very well to structure. You know, it's very odd to explain that to people, because the boys are very stubborn, and they can be mostly zebras, not racehorses. But sometimes it is um, better to have young boys and give them structure, some expectations. When I worked with young men, that was a very important thing to start your day with. At the beginning of the day, you would do what's called setting expectations. That means that you would get them together, all your little group for the day, and you would say, we're doing this, 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 and this. These are the behaviors that I expect from you. This is what is going to happen if you go against those behaviors. And you set the standard for them early, and you stick to it. And you find that even if they got behavioral problems, most of them will respond, you know, or they'll break the rule and know the punishment is coming and try to talk you out of it. But they already been warned and they already know, so they're not as angry when you apply the punishment that goes along with the breaking the rule. But boys and men need structure. They need that structure, and it needs to come from, and I hate to put it this way, it needs to come from other men too, from people they respect, or people that they fear. Jail, fear. Military, it's fear and respect. Dad should be fear, respect, and love. Okay? And you get the full ringer with dad, because you're going to be afraid of him because he's physically imposing. You're going to respect him because he's a man, he stands on his word, and because he's your dad. But he's gonna love you too. So he's gonna be the giver of gifts, the giver of hugs, the guy who says he's proud of you, all that sort of stuff. He's gonna give you that too. I forgot sports. So dad, prison, military, sports. That's kind of it when it comes to male structure. I forgot sports. Coaches work. Not so much church anymore. Church is a mostly female endeavor now. And that happened because the pastors gave up the structure. They don't care about the structure anymore. And that's their own fault. They gave up their own power. So before I get into Bernard Hopkins, let's talk about this King Shady's comment right here. The black community is anti-prison nowadays, even though it's a net good for misguided black people who need discipline. To a degree, yes. Again, sometimes you need to go through having that discipline forced upon you. And it sucks to say that, but people don't understand how important it is. Going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, keeping things clean and orderly, having certain, yes, it gets a bit much where they're policing what you can and can't have, how long you could talk on the phone or something like that. But that's the punishment part of being in prison, is that you're limited in what you can do. But in everyday life, you're limited in what you could do. You have a lot more freedom in everyday life because nobody tells you when you go to bed and when to get up or whatever. That's why you have to create that structure for yourself. And some people who are smart, some people who are industrious, some people who are intelligent, they can create their own structures. There's people I know, gym bros create their own structure. They get up, they go to bed at a certain time, they get up at a certain time, they eat certain meals at certain times of the day. They have a schedule of when they're going to do their reps, of how many reps they're going to do, what days of the week are they going to work certain body parts, and then they see the outcomes over time, that they start seeing how the chest and arms and stuff develop the way they wanted it to, because they put themselves through that discipline, that effort. People who artists are another one. Artists very often have a schedule of they're going to draw from this hour to this hour, and then eventually it's done. And before you know, their sketchbook is finished, or whatever, the mural is finished, or whatever the case may be. And they had to take some time to actually completing something. The problem is, and I think part of another problem that we have, and I don't, not to get too, matter of fact, fuck it. The reason why we don't let boys go to work anymore, like we used to let kids work, we don't let kids work anymore. You know, like we want them to go to school. It's like, okay, but school's not for everybody. Sometimes it might be better off for a young boy, 15, 16 years old, to get a job, you know? Like he don't want to go to school, fine. Give him a job. Let's put him somewhere where again he can get that structure. He's expected to show up at a certain time. He's expected that he's going to do this job. He might even have somebody standing over his shoulder, or he might get some freedom. He gets to mop this floor, and then you come back 30 minutes later, and the floor is not mopped. He's fired. You know, he gets to learn responsibility. You know, all these things that are important for him, he needs to learn these things somehow, in some way. You're either going to learn them in school, you're going to learn them in sports, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to learn them in the military. It's going to be these are the only ways for you to learn them. Because in your everyday life, you're not going to die by your structure. You know, it doesn't work that well. You know, um, it works to varying degrees with different people too. You know, some people can get up at the same time pretty much every day, and they don't have a problem with it. Some people can't do that. Some people don't want to go to bed at a certain time. Some people don't want to get up. Like this channel is doing very well. Like it struggled a lot early. I struggled with finding an audience, but I have structure. Like I created a structure for this channel. You know, sometimes I deviate from it, but for the most part, I created a structure. I do Raw reviews after Raw every night. That means I go to bed, sometimes 12 o'clock or whatever. I get up the next day, I put it together right before I go to work, and then I put it in YouTube. It's going to upload while I'm at work. Maybe while I'm at work, I look for other stories or whatever to talk about. But then I come home, eat dinner, NXT that night, same thing. Next day, same thing, Dynamite. Next day, Thursday. At that point, live stream. Next day, day off. Friday, I don't have nothing to do. I may put a video out on Friday, I may not. But Friday, Saturday, really nothing to do. Sunday, live stream. You know, whatever. And you create a structure, and you just do it over and over and over again. You get used to it. That's why I don't, even when I'm tired, I still do the reviews. Because if I don't do it then, I'm going to fall behind and it ain't going to get done. You know, now it does create problems when something is thrown at you at the last minute. For instance, like when, like the WWE biographies, when those things started to come out, I fell behind because I'm like, oh, I do a show at 8 o'clock, you know? So from 8 to 10, at the very least, I'm on here with you guys. So when am I going to watch the A&E biographies? I don't know. So then I decided, all right, I got to find how I'm going to fit that in my schedule. And then I said, okay, well, what if I put the earbuds in and listen to it at work? I just listen to the biography, not even really watch it. And then I tried that, and I was like, didn't really like that. I said, well, I'll just watch it when I get home. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe I get home at 4 o'clock. You get done with dinner at 5 or 6 or whatever. Don't have time. It's time for Raw. You know, I gotta get ready for watch Raw. You know, so don't have time to watch the biographies. You know, and take notes and take in all the information or do the extra reading that I used to do for the biographies and the Dark Side of the Ring and all that kind of stuff. I don't have time for that shit anymore. And it's unfortunate because I like doing it that way. But I created a structure for myself and I stick to it. You know, this YouTube channels is something where you could do it any way that you want. You could drop a video a week. You know, I could do a 4-hour live stream, do Raw, SmackDown, NXT, everything at one time if I wanted to, but for me, I like having, regular content coming out. And I've toyed with the structure and thought about breaking it a couple of times. But I was like, nah, man, I like it the way that it is. And the outcome seemed to be doing pretty well because the channel, once it got to like 1,000, it skyrocketed out of nowhere. I don't even remember having 3,500 subscribers. It just happened that fast. And I appreciate everybody again, but I'm just utilizing myself as a example of what happens when you have structure. And I still do a lot of the stuff I usually do. It takes me longer to finish a book You know, it takes me longer to read manga. I still have stacks of manga and stuff like that, but I try to stick to a schedule. Like I told you guys, I want to do Battle Angel Alita in terms of the digging in thing. I finished Battle Angel Alita. I got to watch the movie. It'll be done by April. So April, every month I'm gonna do a digging in series where I'm gonna look at something and crack it open and do something like that. But thank you, WG Phil. I appreciate you. All right, so let's get into Bernard Hopkins because he's going to piggyback off a lot of what I'm saying here. He says, quote, this is from Ring TV. So he did an interview with Ring Magazine. I forget what year this was, but here's what Bernard Hopkins had to say. And this is the character that reminded me a lot of Damon Anderson of Diamond Dame from Creed 3. He says, when you come from nothing, it's not easy to have that patience or discipline to change your life. Boxing had to work for Bernard Hopkins because really, what other choice did I have? Prison taught me to maximize every second of every day. I'm always conscious of the clock because when you're incarcerated, you want to burn time. I couldn't have gotten that discipline on the street, not like I got it now. Being locked up in a cell is no fun, but I survived it. Maybe I wouldn't survive it again. That's why I made a vow to myself never to go back inside. I dreamed about a lot of things back then, but for guys like me, dreams usually don't come true. Now that I'm living the dream, I'm never going to allow myself to get too comfortable or to forget the past. So he continues. He says, where do people think I got that toughness, that discipline? It's so obvious. I'm not perpetuating a fraud. That's who I was when I was ignorant. I never got stabbed in prison, but I got stabbed 3 times on the street. Didn't bother me. I wasn't afraid to die. In life, you're either a wolf or a lamb. I was a wolf. People scattered when they saw me coming. It's amazing. Like Bernard Hopkins is one of my favorite fighters ever because when I heard his story, I was just like, man, dude is like literally DMX with no rap deal. Like Bernard Hopkins and DMX are like 2 really great stories, that are, just 2 rugged dudes who, in and out of jail, knuckleheads who they finally got it together. Unfortunately, DMX couldn't hold it together. So here's more. He says, if I didn't go to the gym at 1:00, guess who came looking for me? Smokey Wilson. Smokey Wilson is a murderer that he met in jail and was a former boxer. So Smokey was like his original trainer. He says, and let me tell you, there were days where I didn't feel like training. I know that sounds hard to believe now, but where do you think I got that from? Smokey taught me to stick it out, even in the worst days of my life. He was like a big brother looking out for a little brother. When you leave prison, the odds are so stacked against you. People figure if you are a criminal, you're always a criminal. And the fact is, 80% of the people who got locked up and got out, eventually. 80%. What else can they do? You have to have some reason to believe in something better. If we want to save these young people, they have to know that they can make it. They don't have to become victims or victimizers. Amazing stuff from a boxer. I'm telling you guys before, man, you learn a lot. I don't even watch boxing that much, but I learned so much from listening to boxers and MMA fighters, boxing trainers, listening to like Emmanuel Stewart or Atlas, Tony Atlas. Jake Atlas is not that guy. Teddy Atlas. There we go. Teddy Atlas. I knew it was somebody. Like Tony Atlas. No, that don't sound right either. Teddy Atlas, Emmanuel Stewart, like those guys, because it's all about discipline, focus. It's all the stuff you need to know to succeed. Athletes, they got it because that's where they get it from. People in jail who, like the Mumia Abu Jamal kind of guys who, talk about how terrible prison is. Like, yeah, I'm sure prison sucks. But that structure, it might be something that you needed that you didn't have, that you didn't appreciate when you were on the outside. You couldn't build that for yourself, And there are some guys who are going to come out of there eventually and come out like, whoa, that changed my life, And it's amazing that a lot of people who, when they are faced with awful circumstances, how quickly they can change around. Veterans are really good for that too. So many guys have come from like the military, and either they're batshit crazy, because sometimes dudes come out of jail batshit crazy. But either you come out of jail batshit crazy, or you come out with a renewed focus on the world and how you're going to fix things, how you're going to make up for lost time. And the military is a lot of that's the same way. A lot of those guys, they come out and they're like, I got to make it up. Maybe you got children now, and and you didn't really have to deal with them before, but now you do. Maybe you just don't have that, you know, that issue. But a lot of that stuff, you know, you have to let it motivate you. Jail can be a motivator. It can add structure to your life, and it's screwed up. But too many people have said that it helped them, and those people are not heard. There's a lot of people who have said jail made them better. Bernard Hopkins is just an obvious choice, because I was thinking of that because I was watching a boxing movie. But there's a lot of people who feel like jail really saved their lives. Being removed from society for a little while. Have to sit and think about what you, not just what you did, but what are you going to do? Who are you? That's why so many guys find religion when they're locked up. Because they got nothing else to do but to actually go back and start over. Like, I would be interested in how guys, like, seeing like somebody wrote a paper or a book on finding religion in jail, because guys almost reestablish their connection with God, and also become more than more, I don't want to say manly, but more in touch with what God wants for them once they get out of jail, once they survive something. It's like they used to say there is no atheist in the foxhole. I feel like there's not too many in the prisons either. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of atheists in prison. Like, either they're gonna find, like, if you're black, you're probably gonna find the Nation of Islam, or Islam, or you're gonna find Christianity or something in jail, because you're in a terrible situation and you need answers. It's a tough situation. You need to find a way out, and what you were living without on the outside, you find on the inside. It's kind of crazy to think, but it's interesting. And if you look at the Diamond Dame character, I think you could say that that's essentially what happened with him, right? He got the Golden Glove. He won that Golden Glove early in the movie, but he still was, riding around doing illegal stuff. It took for him to get arrested and for him to come out realizing he lost 15 years of his life. He was refocused. Like, he was in jail, he stayed in shape because he knew one day he was going to get out. One day he was going to be that. He was focused on something. He had a reason to focus. He had expectations. Again, setting expectations. Set expectations for yourself. This is why, when one of the things that helped me finish my first story when I started writing books, what I did was I wrote a note and put it on my door, like right on my closet door. And whenever I went into the closet for something, that note was right there. Like, write a paragraph or something like that. And you force yourself to sit down and do it. There's no such thing as writer's block. It's just a lack of discipline. Whatever you write, you can delete. So force yourself to write something. If you want to be a writer, you have to write something. Force yourself to write, and then double back later if it doesn't make sense, change it, delete it, whatever. But just get in the habit of writing. If you're a singer or you want to play music or you want to draw or whatever, just get in the habit of doing it. Finding time for it. And it's very, very important that you do that. And it's discipline. WG Phil said, what's the best apps to write stories on? Microsoft Word. Stare at a blank page, man. But here's the thing, like, when I write stories, I don't write, I typically, sometimes I'll write an idea first. That's back when I used to actually write a lot. I haven't written a lot lately because I don't have a laptop. So it's like, I haven't written a story in months. Like, I literally have not written a story in months. Um, Mostly because I don't have nothing to write it on, you know. But I'm gonna get a laptop eventually, and then I'm gonna write again. But it's best for you to stare at a a blank page. And I tell you that one of the hardest things for me to do is for me to abandon a project and then come back to it a year later. Like I still work on stories even if I stop writing them. Like I got 10 books probably that I started writing, and in midway through it, I thought of something else. I jumped, probably wrote that, and then probably wrote something else and something else and something else, and then that other book just never went unfinished. And I may still have my original idea of how I want to finish it, but now I forgot where I am. So now I have to go through, read it, and then it's like, okay, where was I going with this? That's hard. Okay, so finish what you start too. I'm not saying, you know, I'm that guy, but finish what you start. It's always harder to go back and finish something that you started and now you don't remember anything about it. It's the same thing with books. If you start reading a book and you intend to read the whole book, then read the whole book. Because if you say I'm gonna read half of it, then I'm gonna go read something else and I'm gonna come back to it, you're gonna forget. Like I've done that to books before too. That's why I usually read 3 or 4 books at a time. Like I have things that I can sit down while I'm watching TV that I read, and I have things while I'm watching, like I spare time that I read. I got books for the toilet. I have books for pretty much, when I'm out riding around or whatever. Books if I'm waiting in urgent care or something like that. I just keep a book on me, you know, and I got used to just carrying books. That's probably why I have so many that I haven't read, because I just get so used to having a book on me somewhere. Um, but it just goes to saying with everything. If you are dedicated to something, you will find time for it. You will build it into your schedule. Like some people will say, put an hour aside to read every day. Some people say that. I don't know if if that works. I've never done that, but I do try to realize that I'm going to put something on because I want to hear white noise, and I'll read while I'm watching it. Like a lot of times I'll be reading the manga while watching wrestling. You know, that's usually when I'm watching old stuff. I'll have like a book or something on me, flipping through it, reading it. But typically you just got to have structure, repetition. These things matter. You know, it's how you get good at stuff. You know, and it's very underrated because people think that it's uh it's it's pure talent, but a lot of times it's not pure talent. It's talent plus dedication plus discipline. You know, and you can get all the information in the world. Like I wanted to start up my own nonprofit. Let's talk about a time where I failed to follow through. I was working in a place on campus, on a college campus. Um, when I was working there, it was the libraries on campus. It was a public library, and they were talking about how to open a small business. And I went into this meeting and they gave me all the whole breakdown of starting a small business. Here's what you need to do. I was like, yeah. I took the packet. I went through it. I was like, I'm gonna do this, 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 and this. I put that packet down. I don't know where it is now. It's just that you don't follow through. Meanwhile, I got friends who took similar classes and they went and start themselves a business. I just I didn't have it didn't connect with me. While I was interested in it, it says a lot that I didn't really care. You know, because I didn't follow through. And in life, if you say you want to do something, you have to follow through with it. You can't just say, oh, this is what I want to do and then expect success to come. Part of it is you got to keep trying. You got to keep doing it. You get better at it every day. You just got to keep trying. Darren Gordon Hill says, I don't feel like I'm getting better, just repeating. Well, do things a little differently. You know, challenge yourself a little bit. It depends on what you're trying to do, though. Like, let's say I know Darren Gordon Hill likes to make music. So let's say you like, doing hip hop music. but you do it and you feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, well, spend some time doing something else. Try the blues or jazz or funk or whatever until you feel like, the challenge has come back, the spice in it has come back. And maybe you can actually add what you're doing and you're not very good at to something that you are very good at and create something different. Like give you another example. I like writing fantasy stories. I like writing crime dramas and stuff like that. I don't like writing romance stories. An ex-girlfriend told me to write erotica. She's like, you need to write erotica. And, because she says you can be very descriptive about sex and stuff like that. So try that. And I was against it. I was like, I'm not about to sit here and write some Zane porno book. I'm not about to sit here and do that. I'm about to sit here and work myself up. Like, it seemed pointless to me. But then I'll say, you know what? Let's take the spirit of her idea. The spirit of her idea is to try something different, write something different. So I started writing a romance story. And I wrote the romance story like shortly after I read Neil Gaiman's book. So I came up with this entire conception. I'm gonna tell you what you guys, because it's not going to get finished. So I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. The story came to me. I don't remember where it came from, but I said, what if, as a woman, she woke up and she was in a bed with somebody who's not her husband, and she was on a work trip or something like that. And the first part of the book is going to be her and her friend in the car going over how they're going to break it to her husband that she cheated on him. And then the second part is once they get to the house, he's going to know. Now he's going to leave. Now we're going to have to deal with the actual conflict of him being cheated on. And then I was going to challenge myself to bring them back together, because that was the real challenge. Because emotionally, I'm the kind of guy that I would say, once you tell me you're cheating on me, it's over, right? And most guys are like that. But how can I challenge myself to write a story of forgiveness where a husband has to forgive his cheating wife? Can I write that story? The answer is yes, I can. And did I get to a point where I said the end? Yes. Was I happy with it? No. But I finished it. Now, when I said it wasn't going to be finished, it means I wasn't going to go back over it. I'm not going to go back over and touch it up and all that kind of stuff, which is what I usually do with my stories. I wrote it. It is what it is. It does it suck? Probably. But it was a challenge that I took on to write something that was somewhat romantic and to challenge myself to fight against my better emotions and say, I'm not going to let this character do what I would do. He's going to do the opposite. And so now I have to infuse this character with forgiveness that I don't have, patience that I don't have. And I have to write the female character in a certain way, and understand her position and create new positions. The eyeball thing was I had to figure out, once I started writing the story, how I was going to keep the characters together, And then so I came up with this weird idea. I was like, what would be a situation where two people will be, he can't escape her. He can't get away from her. How do I fix that situation? And then I came out of nowhere. I was like, what if it was a snowstorm and he was snowed into the house or whatever, and it's just the two of them in the house, and now he's forced to be in this house with her for X amount of hours or whatever, forcing them to work it out. Not, they're going to go to the pastor and talk it out. No. Not he's going to sit down on his own and realize he really loves his family and go back. No. That they're going to literally have that tension in the house between the two of them and work it out. Work out how they feel, work out how he feels, and eventually dissipate the heat. That was hard. That was very hard. That kicked my ass, man. I'm telling you. That's the one story that beat the shit out of me, because I was so exhausted after I wrote it. I was like, oh my God. It's not anything I would ever do. I am more likely to believe myself able to fly than it is to forgive a cheating wife. It's easier for me to write that. because at least I have so many examples of people who think they can fly and who can fly or whatever. I don't have too many good examples of guys who are cucked and, come to sort of not accept it, but get over it. It's not a lot of that going on. It's very hard because I have trust issues. So that's very, very difficult for me. And it was a challenge. It was a personal challenge. And again, that's where your discipline comes in. It was easy for me to retreat and write something else. It would have been. But I didn't. So I told myself this is what I was going to do. And you have to challenge yourself a lot. Even if it's just small challenges. You have to challenge yourself quite a bit. Keep things from being boring. Switch things up some. Change your schedule up sometimes if you feel like you're in a rut. And I feel like that keeps things fresh too. It helps you a lot. Okay. Where was I going with? I was going somewhere with one of these things, but I lost my train of thought. How are you guys doing? What's up? Um, as a matter of fact, I should. Can I post this story? It sucks, but I want to post it. Since I told you guys about it, I do want you to read it. It's not good. At least I don't think so, but I want you guys to read it. Use still images instead of wasting time editing videos. Right. You know what? Sometimes people they do live streams so they won't have to do essays. Like some people like doing the essay videos, and they sit down and they spend time writing out all these pages of notes, and then they go through. And like for me, I can write notes all day. When I sit down and do what I did earlier, just write down what my notes or whatever. It comes to the reciting part, like that takes forever. Like you see somebody like uh Aiden Paladin, like she on Twitter like posts out she got like 200 pages of notes, and you're like, she about to really like write out a script and then sit here and read this script. Like that fucking kill me. Like writing it out is fine, but sitting here reading it over and over and over and over and over to make sure that my vocal tone is the same. I don't slip over words. I don't, skip over things. That would kick my ass. I'm telling you, I barely get through the short things that I do right. Um, celebrity culture, yeah. People learning to live vicariously through other people. What that is not having an identity of your own. You don't have your own identity, so you borrow Kim Kardashian's identity. And you see it all the time through like these female rappers and stuff. You see it through male rappers too. I mean, it's mostly men. Let's put it like that. And it's very sad to say. But I think G. Craig Lewis was absolutely correct. When you look at a lot of especially when I was a teenager, I saw it so many times. Lil Wayne get dreadlocks. You see a bunch of little boys with dreadlocks. Lil Wayne gets tattoo on his face. A bunch of people get tattoos on their face. Some rapper right now has a grill. A bunch of people get grills. The Mitchell and Ness jerseys. My God, there was dudes that are killing each other with Mitchell and Ness jerseys. Having the best pair of Jordans. It's the only way. It's people borrowing their identity from people that they see on TV because they don't have a solid enough identity in themselves. There's a desire to want that though. I don't. Well, did you get a bald head because Onyx had a bald head? Darren Gordon Hill, or was it a happenstance? Like you started going bald and just said forget it, because literally there's dudes who literally started doing things because their favorite rapper did it. Drinking lean, smoking weed, having certain kinds of chains, getting certain tattoos. I don't know what you typed. Let's see. For what Top Dog says for decades we've been idolizing these people to the point they pass out when they see them, whereas people like plumbers and farmers don't get enough praise or recognition. Well, that's true, and that'll never change because a plumber is never going to be a celebrity. A farmer is never going to be a celebrity. It's unfortunate, but that's just the case. You know, so but that stuff when you see plumbers and farmers and all that kind of thing, usually people who are going to go into those fields are going to know people who already did that. A lot of farmers are farmers because that's what their dad was. That's what their uncles are, their grandparents, um, and that sort of thing. It was it's an interesting situation to consider, but if you grew up on a farm, you may feel that that's who you are, even if you move away from it. That's an interesting thing about Brock Lesnar and Sid Vicious. Like, Sid Vicious had an attitude where he was a farm boy, even when he was wrestling. I'm just a farm boy. Brock Lesnar would say the same thing. I'm just a boy from the farm, and you would get them that's who they are because that's how they grew up. That's what they identified with. So no matter where they go, they have that same work ethic. They have the same attitude, and that led them to success in other industries. They didn't stay on the farm, even though I think they both still have farms. Like Brock has a farm now, but he didn't stay in farming. He took what he learned from his parents and the work ethic, and he applied it to other endeavors, and he became successful in other endeavors. And that's usually what you try to tell people, and they don't want to hear it because they want instant success, microwave success. And Talib Kweli, even though back when I used to like Talib Kweli, he said something that was pretty interesting when he says it took him 10 years to become an overnight success, you know? And it's amazing. Like I've been reading Dilla Time, the book on Jay Dilla, producer from here in Detroit. And you see that he studied production. He studied, beats and breaks and this kind of stuff. And he spent hours on that stuff. What people thought was the boring part, crate digging and listening for samples and things like this. And he took time to learn how to do his own thing. And yeah, he had mentors and people who helped him because that's no man is an island. That's how everything is. It was incredible to me, the dedication. And that's always what I'm very interested in is the process. Like when I listen to Prince talk about, music or whatever, he talks about music in such an interesting way that you walk away from it saying to himself, like, I see why he was successful. Michael Jackson, same thing. When somebody is really good at something, and they excel at it, they have an excitement for it, and they have an insight to it that other people are kind of like, whoa, that's special. Like that's something. you know. Um, so yeah, I get it. So in order for somebody to be like a good tradesman, there's got to be something you saw a dad or uncle or stepdad do, and then that's something that you want to do. Because typically, yeah, especially young black boys, man, that TV has got them too deep. That the hooks of the rappers and the ball players and all that stuff's too deep into their skin, man. And they may not even understand what it takes to get there or what the physical and genetic gifts they have to be born with in order for them to get there. For instance, and people are always making this mistake too. Like I was having a conversation with somebody about Colin Kaepernick, and the conversation came up to, well, he would have been in the NFL anyway, even if those white people hadn't have adopted him. And I said, like, what makes you think that? Well, his genetics are why he made to the NFL. I'm like, look, there's plenty of people with good genetics. They don't make it to the NFL. It's like there's people with good parents who don't make it to the NFL. It's a combination of both. Part of how his success is how he was raised. That's a big part of his success. A big part of his success comes from his household. Another part of his success is going to come from his genetics. You know, how tall is he? How much does he weigh? But he had to learn his work ethic. You know, it's like it's always odd to me that people think that you can breed superior athletes like cattle or something like that. Like that slavery breeding thing, people truly believe that shit. Like you could just breed superior human beings or something like that. That's not how this works. No. I tell people all the time, and I think I've already said it on this channel before, you can actually clone Michael Jordan and still not get Michael Jordan. Because what Michael Jordan is a collection of his genetics plus how he was raised. It's not just a matter of his genetics. He didn't become like learning how to play basketball wasn't in his genetics. you know, that's something he learned. He studied the game. He failed and overcame. He pushed through. There's things that go with success that you aren't born with. There are some things that you are born with, but there are other things where you're absolutely not born with them. The idea that he would have been successful even without his parents is ridiculous. He played quarterback. We already know that quarterback is a much different position than linebacker or safety or something like that. For starters, it's a difference between playing offense and playing defense in the NFL. And it's a different ball game, man. People think that this whole thing is all nature. It's not. It can't be all nature. It can't be all nurture either, because no matter how nice your parents are, no matter how much structure you come from, if you're 5'2", you're probably not going to make it to the NBA. And that's just, on average. Some people, I think there was a player in the NBA that was 5'2" one time. But most people are not going to be 5'2" in the NBA. You're certainly not going to be 5'2" in the NFL. You can forget it. There's going to be a certain level of genetics there, but there's going to be more how you were raised. Because you could be 6'6", 280 pounds, perfect NFL defensive tackle. But if you're a knucklehead, you're going to jail. Or you're going to get killed. Mike Brown, the kid who got shot by that white police officer, probably would have been a perfect offensive lineman for a football team or something like that. He was a big kid. But look at how he was raised. Or the lack of raising for him. And he used his size in a different way. But that comes with, structure and discipline and learning. It's just, it is what it is. You can look at somebody and say, you like the calling, you have a natural knack for this, this, and this. You're a big dude, you're aggressive. If you're into sports, okay, there's some things that you can do. If you're a big boy, I'm talking tall and wide, the NFL is looking at you. You might even be, if you're a certain level of wide, you might even be a good boxer. You got to put in the work, though. But if you're tall and skinny, the NBA might be for you. But you gotta put the work in. But if you want, it doesn't matter what your physical gifts are. If you're a dipshit, you're either going to jail, you're going to prison, or you're gonna get kicked off the team. So it doesn't it doesn't matter. Part of it is going to be your temperament, your mentality, and your desire. Some people are built like offensive linemen. They just don't want to be offensive linemen. They don't want to play football. They want to be a b-ball player, or whatever. They want to be a pimp or some shit. They want to be a rapper. Everybody wants to be a rapper. Have no concept of breath control or how to put and all that kind of stuff. It is what it is. Top Dog, I was listening to that interview right before I started this. And he wasn't wrong. Interestingly enough, he said some of our guys, and then he said some people in the industry, period. So he kind of backed up and corrected himself. But he's not wrong. That's what people like about MJF, because he actually stays in character. He even tweets in character sometimes. Those weird out of character tweets for MJF actually stand out quite a bit. Um, but he actually tweets in character, and it says a lot, you know, that people are like that. But we'll get into it one day, probably. People want the quickest way to fame and fortune. Absolutely. You know, and for women, the quickest way to fame and fortune is sex. So if you're a young girl and you wanna be famous, what are you gonna do? You're gonna fuck somebody, or you're gonna put yourself in position to fuck somebody, or OnlyFans, porn, stripper, because those are jobs that any woman can do. Literally, no matter how blind, crippled, crazy, or ugly she is, porn, strippers, there's something for everybody out there. Somebody might watch your porno just to laugh at you, but they'll pay to watch it. It's people are like that, man. Foot fetishes. I've seen young women. I've known one or two, not too many, who will do certain things for money. Not overtly sexual, but they'll play dress up and post pictures or whatever for money. They may not do actual sexual favors, but they'll put themselves in a position to quote unquote be a sex worker because it's easy money. You know, there's always some horny dudes out there. There's always some horny dudes out there that it's the easiest way for a young woman to make money. Like I think it was Pimp C to say there's no such thing as a broke woman. Like you're sitting on a gold mine. Talking about that pussy, as they say. You can always slang that. The worst comes to worst. You know. So a woman who's really down bad, usually because she started doing drugs and wasted herself. You know, like there was a chick. Um, she was 38. She got herself a 60 some odd year old boyfriend, a sugar daddy. She don't do nothing but sit around all day snorting coke. And when he can finally get it to working, she does 15, 20 minutes of work, and then she sits around all day and sleeps on his couch and runs up his credit card and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's easy to survive out here if you're a woman because all you gotta do is exist. Some people are just so desperate. They're so lonely. They're so starved for attention. You know, they're willing to put up with anything. Do I think 90s trash TV helped spread this stuff with women? Um, I think mostly it's a lot of the 2000s trash stuff. The Real Housewives of such and such, Love and Hip Hop. A lot of the mannerisms of the internet today comes from that subsection of society. It has fully informed the gay agenda too. So a lot of that diva mentality comes across in a lot of the LGBT stuff, and it just permeates a lot of society. I think Real Housewives of yada yada, love and hip hop and all that stuff. That stuff has been devastating to the black community. It has been devastating because it has destroyed young girls. You know, now all of them try to dress that way with the extra long fingernails and boobs out all the time. I mean, heels so high they can barely walk in them. They just look useless to society. Like you see some of these. Like I literally saw on Twitter a rapper with her titties out, female rapper with her titties out on stage on purpose. Like it's not like it was a mistake. She took her titties out and was rapping on stage because that's how she gets attention. And you realize, like, yo, that's how that's the business now. And it's getting worse and worse. It went from Little Kim just talking nasty and occasionally doing some nasty pictures to it just got nastier and nastier and nastier, and now it's just plain out there. You know, it's just out there. Now they just doing whatever. They're gonna start doing pornos and jump off their music career. That's ridiculous. But that's the easy way to get money in society today if you're a woman. Women trying to do it the hard way. Well, they try to make the road women for women easier and easier anyway, in terms of set asides and stuff like that. But it's very easy for a woman to make money if she really wants to. All she gotta do is whore herself out. You know, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult. Um, Megatron didn't really like the NFL. Just used his skills to get ahead, then retire. Well, that's smart. Yeah, that's smart. You know, a lot of people don't really. It's strange too because very few football players will be willing to admit that they really didn't care to play football. You know, very few. Um, it's very few of them will be willing because it's such a dream for so many of them. You know, it's a way out. But then you talk to some of these dudes and they're like, man, practice sucks. You know, I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to get hit. I'm tired of the working out. I'm tired of working out. I'm tired of this, tired of that. And then they try to start looking for a way out. You know, they even take themselves out of the league and just retire on their own, like Calvin Johnson did. Um, Top Dog says, speaking of WWE, I saw a tweet of yours online saying you fell out of wrestling in '99. Why did you fall out, and what brought you back? I just lost interest in wrestling. To me, it was. I had a conversation with some people earlier today about the Monday Night Wars, and they were talking about how WWE was lying on WCW and all this stuff, and WCW was really awesome secretly. And I'm like, well, y'all guys, what specifically are you guys talking about? Because WWE tells the same story every time. WCW kicked their ass for 83 weeks, but then WCW imploded. They did a lot of bad creative stuff that ran off people. You know, they didn't appreciate some of the undercard talent that they had. They did goofy storylines like Judy Bagwell on a forklift or whatever. They made fun of Jim Ross. They started doing like the Oklahoma stuff, or they had not three Pete, but what was it, 3 Count, or the Tank Abbott stuff, or they mimicked the hardcore title and all that kind of stuff. They did a lot of bad creative in '99, 2000. And I said, like, wrestling sucked at that point, you know, because it was bad shit on both shows. WWE did a lot of garbage in the Attitude Era. That wasn't it really choppa your PP, Mark Henry and Mae Young giving birth to a hand. You know, there was a lot of silly shit going on in '99 and 2000. I was like not interested, you know, and I lived through that stuff. It's not like me going through the network watching it with, you know, new eyes or whatever. I was literally a teenager while this stuff was going on. And I can tell you, yeah, it was fun. It was fun in '97 and '98. But by 2000, I was like, yo, like, look, we gonna have to do more than this, bro. Like, this is garbage, B. Like, the dude killed a guy and fed him his own dog. Like, come on, man. Is that nobody talks about that shit when they talk about the Attitude Era? Oh, the Attitude Era was so great. Like, oh yeah, Naked Midian was great, huh? That classic Midian Big Boss Man match was great, huh? That's what the Attitude Era really was. You're looking at just the Rock segments and just the Hogan, you know, the Triple H and Austin segments and all that. Yeah, if that's all you watched, then yeah, you probably thought it was awesome. But then Goldust came out there with like traffic cones on his chest and a ball gag. That was great TV. Was that entertaining to you? Were you entertained by that dumb shit? You know, like I wasn't. That shit was dumb to me. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was dumb on both shows. I thought it was just stupid wrestling. And I've gone back and watched some of it since, but I've never seen anything in '99 outside of the WrestleManias and some of the WCW bigger events. Well, I watched the WCW pay-per-views from that era. Watched most of the WWF era pay-per-views from that era, but I didn't go back and relive. I'm not going to go back and watch Raw from '99. I don't think there's anything on that show I want to see. You know, like I can't even imagine. Like I missed something from the Attitude Era and was like, I needed to go see that. There's nothing, literally almost nothing from that era that I felt like I missed. That I felt like I needed to go back and see outside of WrestleMania and SummerSlam. Like that's it. You know, once I saw WrestleMania, 99 and 2000, because I did watch. I was still watching wrestling when WrestleMania 15 happened. I was still watching wrestling, but by 2000, I was mostly out of it. And WrestleMania 2000 took me out completely because I was like, I'm done with this. I didn't even make it to Backlash, I don't think. And then I was in and out for the next 5 years. I was watching here and there, but I was out for mostly. And what got me to coming back was it's a mixture of things. Um, it was a situation where I was a lot like people today. Like you talk about people who they are surprised or they roll in the eyes when they hear like Kofi Kingston was a champion or Big E, and they're like, pfft. That's how I felt when I heard like Eddie Guerrero was a champion. I was like, what? Like, why would I care about that? Like, I'm still thinking Eddie Guerrero is Mamacita. I'm like, the hell, why would I care about that shit? You know, it took me for to go back and watch it to like, okay, now I appreciate it a little bit more. But that's one of the few things that I went back and appreciated more after I went back and watched it. But when I got to WrestleMania 21, that's what got me to come back. Because I remember I watched Raw the night after WrestleMania 21. I didn't even know WrestleMania 21 had even happened, really. And then I watched the highlights, and I was like, Orton Undertaker. I had seen Randy Orton a couple of times, thought he was okay. And I saw him counter a choke slam into the RKO. I was like, ooh, okay. And then I saw Shawn Michaels wrestle Kurt Angle, and I was like, okay, I got to see this. All right. And I remember JBL from him chasing Mexicans and him chasing Mexicans across the border. That was like my favorite SmackDown segment of the time where I was watching wrestling. Okay, well, I wasn't watching wrestling because I poked my head in one time on a SmackDown, and that was when JBL did the "It's Morning Again" promo. And I think later in that same episode, or maybe the next week or something like that, he was chasing Mexicans across the border. He was feuding with Eddie Guerrero. And I was like, oh my God, this guy fucking rules. But I didn't go back and start watching the show again. I came back WrestleMania 21. That's when I went to FYE shortly there, maybe a few months later, and I bought WrestleMania 21 on DVD. And that's when I got back into it. Because I was like, all right, WrestleMania 21 ruled. It was very good. And I was like, all right, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. And I've been back since. I wavered a little bit because I didn't really like going back watching a lot of the single brand pay-per-views from that era, like 2003, 2004. I wasn't a fan of those. But generally speaking, I like the idea of a Raw brand and a SmackDown brand. Generally speaking, I like that, you know? And even though I wasn't a Cena fan, I hated his guts, much like most people. I came to appreciate like Batista and the effort they were putting in on Batista. I thought that was amazing. The storyline between Eddie and Ray, I thought that was amazing. I thought it was great. And so I was stuck with that stuff. But that Attitude Era shit, like, come on, man. Nah. It was just so much of that stuff. I was just looking at it like it was stupid. Like at the time, when I was a kid, the NWO and DX were fun. You know, it was rebellious. It was so different from the stuff we was watching just a year or two before, like when it was Doink the Clown and the Goon and Who and all that other goofy shit. Ice Train and Scott Norton and Firebreaker Chip and all that other dumb shit. It was different, you know. So it was different, and so that was refreshing for a year or so, where you started seeing like, wow, these guys are different. You start seeing people go back and forth, like, wow, that's interesting. But the stories were so stupid. The matches were so boring. Like I didn't care about almost most of those characters. I didn't care about, and a lot of the early eras of the Ruthless Aggression era was just as bad. Like the lesbians, 3 Minute Warning, the Katie Vick stuff. Notice I didn't see any of that shit when it happened either. You know, but I was just kind of like, you know, you take it the better with the sweet when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I greatly appreciated it more, at least from an in-ring and promo perspective. I still wasn't watching Raw though because Triple H had tuned. He fucked that up. I wasn't watching Raw. But yeah, Triple H did it for me, and I wasn't interested in watching Goldberg either, even though Goldberg was already gone. I was kind of like, you know, not interested. But there were certain things on those shows at the time where I would peek back in, you know. like Hogan and Rock. Obviously, I knew that was going to happen. One of my brothers who still watched it was like, The Rock's going to wrestle Hulk Hogan, and so I ended up seeing that. But I really didn't dive back in, and like that didn't hook me. Chris Jericho was the world champion. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't give a fuck about Chris Jericho in 2002. To me, he was the same Lionheart Chris Jericho that he was in 1997. Again, how some of you guys think about like Kofi Kingston and Big E and those guys being in the main event now. That's how I was thinking of Benoit and Guerrero and Jericho. I'm like, these guys are fucking midgets. I don't care about these dudes. I didn't care about him when he's in WCW. I don't care about him now. You can't make me care. And it didn't really click with me, and that's how I was thinking until I told somebody about Edge. Like I remember telling somebody about Edge, like, Edge is the world champion. And they looked at me and they was like, the tag team guy? And I was like, but you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it to see the character progression. And it was kind of like, he is in a tag team. Like, how is he the world champion now? And that kind of reaction. I was like, yo, you're not even giving him a chance. Like you're just shitting on him immediately because of what you thought he was. And then that's when I realized I became self-aware. That's how I was treating like Eddie Guerrero and Jericho and all those guys. I was thinking about it like, yeah, okay. I have to be a little bit more open-minded. I still don't. Jericho being the champion, I don't have two feelings about it one way or the other. I think that basically they booked him like shit the entire time anyway, so it didn't matter that he was a champion. But that didn't get my attention. Jericho and Benoit and all those guys being at the top of the card, I didn't care about those guys. I didn't see any reason to care about them. So it took for me to go back and start, actually paying attention to what they do. Like I became a fan of Chris Jericho's mostly after he had won the title because I didn't start really paying attention to him until after he won the title. Even when he was in WCW, I was a fan when he went to WCW. But then he came to the WWE, he was doing mid-card shit for a long time. He was wrestling China. He was in a Forever feud with X-Pac. He was feuding with like Road Dogg, and I think he did some stuff with Ken Shamrock, but he wasn't really moving at all, So I didn't really see the stuff he did with Triple H because I think I was already out by then. But when you go back and you look at it, like, okay, it was better than I thought. He's still a midget, but he has personality. And Chris Benoit doesn't have a personality, but you respect his work. Guerrero, in-ring work is great. Personality is great. Ability to adapt is phenomenal. So I started putting him in the same categories like Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect and, Ted DiBiase and those guys, where I was like, yeah, it would have been great if those guys would have been world champion. They didn't. But in this era, guys like that can become world champion. So I just take it with a grain of salt. So when they do weird stuff like JBL being the world champion, which is off-putting because I'm like, it's Bradshaw. It's Justin Hart Bradshaw too, It's off-putting for me. When I wasn't in wrestling watching it, it was disturbing. And it's just that's how I feel when people say, you tell people Jinder Mahal was a WWE champion. They be like, what? I can't be mad at you if you have that reaction because I had it too, not just back then, but I still have it today when I see, weirdos in title picture. I'm like, why? I still don't get it. But you can take somebody who nobody saw as a top guy and work on them and get them. Cody is a great example, today. Cody may end up like another Jericho where if you weren't paying attention, you're like Stardust is about to become the world champion. What the fuck is going on in the world? But you haven't been following the story. You don't get it, And that's the one thing I did like about wrestling is that there is some continuity there. So you can skip stuff and you can still get brought back up. But also, it provides you with a good jumping on point, but it also provides you with a good jumping off point. WrestleMania 2000 was a perfect jumping off point for me. I hated that fucking show. I remember I watched that show live and was incredibly frustrated with it. And I was like, I was sick of everything that WWF was doing. I was tired of it all. I was sick of the McMahons. I was sick of Triple H. I was tired of The Rock. I was tired of Mankind. I was tired of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was tired of everybody. I didn't want to see any of those motherfuckers anymore. I was like, I'm tired of it. Just tired of all of this shit. It just felt like it was the same shit over and over and over and over and over again. You know? And I was like, even when I heard that, Rock and Austin was having their last match, I still wasn't that interested. Cause I'm like, they had two of these fucking matches already. And plus I had been it had been ingrained in me that it wasn't over. You know? Even when Shawn Michaels came back, I think I saw some of his comeback, but it didn't make me stick. It didn't make it stick. It's hard to explain why, some of my favorite wrestlers, even being, Steve Austin was one of my favorite guys. I was tired of him, but him retiring should have got my attention and I should have been right back in the seat, but I wasn't. I just didn't care. I was burnt out. I didn't care. Shawn, favorite wrestler of all time. Shawn's coming back. I still was just kind of like, I don't care. Like it won't be long. I don't give a shit. I was just so burnt out on it because I hated it so bad. And it was crazy because I always say, as bad as 99 and 2000 was for me, and I know some people really love 2000, 95 was the worst shit ever. But it's the stuff that I actually remember, because it was literally my childhood. I was 11 in 1995. So I was in the midst of being a super wrestling fan. So no matter how terrible it was from a creative standpoint with all the stupid characters they were doing, I have a soft spot for it. So I will tell you objectively, 95 is worse than 2000. It's worse than 99. It's worse than whatever you think wrestling is bad. So you think wrestling is bad today, 95 was worse. Easily worse. But I would rather watch 1995 than watch some of that shit today. Because at least I can go back into my mind and say, I had fun watching this at the time. Okay? I watched Superstars all day today. I watched Superstars. 1994, I watched almost a whole year. Well, I watched all of 93 over the last couple of days. Just Superstars. I didn't watch Raw too. I watched just Superstars. And I'm telling you how my mind is being opened. I watched Owen Hart and Marty Jannetty have a 6-minute match, and I said that's my favorite match of the week. There was no storyline going into the match outside of Owen is preparing to wrestle Brett. And I was like, this is one of my favorite matches of the week. One of my favorite matches I actually sat still and watched. Because usually I don't even sit still and watch matches anymore. So I was like, Owen Hart is about to wrestle Marty Jannetty. I've never seen this. I like Owen Hart. Marty Jannetty's great. Let's watch this. Match was 6 minutes for Superstars. It was February 19th, I think. And I just walked away from it thinking, those dudes are really good. I liked it. They told a very good story. Owen got over big. And I was like, this is great. The backstage promos, there's no guy in the ring with a microphone. They're doing the backstage promos. They're like 90 seconds. Mostly squash matches. The crowd are into squash matches. The Steiner brothers just go out there and DDT somebody. They be standing on top of each other. Like people care about the in-ring product. People don't care about the in-ring product. That's why it's hard to rate matches today. Nobody cares about the in-ring product anymore. Even the people who say they do, the AEW fan base, they don't. Because they don't even watch the fucking shit, and then they overlook everything. They say WWE fans overlook Charlotte and Shotzi. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to tell you the truth. When I saw Shotzi was going to be in it, I knew it was going to be bad. Shotzi is a great character. She's a good girl. But as a worker, she's not there. And I've said that 100 times. She ain't there. That's why they don't use her that much. So I knew it was going to be bad. So when people started tweeting out clips of it, like, Charlotte sucks. Like, it's not Charlotte's fault. She's wrestling fucking Shotzi. Shotzi wrestles like she's blind sometimes. Like, come on, bro. Like, no way. Like, everybody likes her because she's cool. But let's just be honest. It's not good. But when you go and you watch old stuff, that's why I'm always telling people, go back, watch Old shows, not just the pay-per-views, because everybody goes back and watches the pay-per-views. Watch the old shows. Wrestling Challenge, Superstars, Thunder, WCW Saturday Night. I became more of a fan watching WCW Saturday Night than watching their pay-per-views during the Monday Night Wars. Because I lived through a lot of that shit. I lived through Goldberg spearing through the Giant and slamming them and everything. That shit was great. But I never saw WCW in 1992 and 1993 or whatever. So seeing Johnny B. Bad go out there and have a TV championship match was interesting. And it wasn't great. I'm not saying it was the greatest thing in the world. I'm saying it was interesting. It was different. It was presented in a way that was appealing. And despite the fact that it was silly, it was interesting. It wasn't boring because those shows are only an hour, so they're not boring. You don't have to, and if they do become boring or stupid or whatever, it's not going. Nothing lasts forever on those shows because it's only an hour. So if you don't want to see this match, it's probably going to be 10 minutes max. All right, at the most, because you're not watching a pay-per-view, you're watching TV. So Avatar or Max Moon shows up. You're like, ugh, I don't want to see this. You can go to the bathroom, come back, he's gone. And then Macho Man is ranting in a promo. He's doing Slim Jim commercials, all kinds of stuff. You're like, this is great. But then you also go back and you can look at that stuff and say, there will be weeks that will go by. I wouldn't see Bret Hart. I wouldn't see Macho Man. I wouldn't see Shawn Michaels. But Diesel will be there. And he's over. People are really into him. People are really into Bam Bam Bigelow. Then you get Bastion Booger and you're like, ugh. But then after that, you get like Adam Bomb. And you're like, Adam Bomb looks cool. He's not good, but he looks cool. The only time I really started grumbling is when it's characters that I absolutely just can't get behind. Repo Man. It's just nothing you can do with that. Bastion Booger. There's nothing you can do with that. Crush. I fucking hate Crush. There's nothing you can do with Crush, okay? I was just in the middle of having a fit earlier today because Randy Savage's last opponent in WWE was fucking Crush. Well, at WrestleMania, it was Crush. You couldn't think of nobody else? Crush? Like, that's so frustrating to me. But you could tell that WWE was on the ball because Raw and Superstars, man, they were building on top of each other. Bro, they were so much fun. They had the Quebecers. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Jacques Rougeau today. I was going to save this for Hall of Fame talk, but they need to put the Rougeau family in the Hall of Fame, the entire family. Specifically Jacques Rougeau. All right? He should be in the Hall of Fame. He is so good. But what put me over the top was Johnny Polo, a.k.a. Raven. And Raven, so the Quebecers are feuding with Men on a Mission. And Jacques Rougeau was far too old to know anything about rap. And Pierre Roulette is too white and Canadian to know anything about rap. So you know who's doing the rap stuff? Johnny Polo. Scott Levy, Raven. They had him do a freestyle while he's with the Quebecers. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most entertaining fucking things that I had seen on one of those products in a long fucking time. Raven was now he was doing like mockery, saying like my homeboys, the Quebecers, my homies, my G's. I'm like, okay, like he's clearly going over. He's trying to go over the line, but he's not going too far. And you're like, this shit is fucking funny. Like he's fucking hilarious. He was on commentary bothering Vince, kept calling him Vic, and Vic kept Vic. And Vince kept it's Vince. Thank you very much. he would just keep calling him Vic. It was great. Like it was fun stuff. Stan Lane as Vince's co-host. He's awful. I forgot all about Sweet Stan being on the announce team for WWF Superstars. He's awful. All right, he's terrible. He has no personality, none. He just looks great. He's got great hair, but he's absolutely terrible as a personality for TV. He's awful. And I was tweeting out like, whose idea was it for like Stan Lane to be next to Vince? Was that Vince's idea? You know, like he was awful. But I love the way they put the shows together. You know, they have like the Royal Rumble report, and here's Todd Pettengill, and he's wearing WWF logo and everything. He's wearing hats and glasses, and he's got the jacket on, and he's breaking down the Royal Rumble. They used to tell you everybody who's going to be in the Royal Rumble. Entire fucking match. You know, everybody who's going to be in it. You know, you be like, But there'd still be surprises. Like Greg the Hammer Valentine, he wasn't even on the roster. You know, like he was in the Royal Rumble though. Tenru and the Great Kabuki. Like I've never seen these people before. Like they're not on this show. Like I remember seeing like the Royal Rumble. Like I don't ever remember Kabuki doing anything in WWF. And then you go and I watch Superstars, which is Superstars is the A show at the time though. It's not Raw. It's Superstars. I don't remember Great Kabuki doing anything. And it turns out he didn't do anything. He was just brought in for the Royal Rumble, just like Tenru, you know. And then you figure out they're the mercenaries. They were brought in to take out Lex Luger or whatever. So there were storyline reasons for them to be there, not just, hey, here's a surprise. So I like that, man. You had Jim Ross. He had his special part of the show where he would pitch to the promos. You got to watch guys like Shawn Michaels develop. It's tremendous, man. Like, you see the vignettes. That's the funny thing. Like, the Jeff Jarrett vignettes are classy. Oh, I love the Jeff Jarrett vignettes. They're so good. And then you have, like, the Thurman Sparky Plug promos where they just, you know, the vignettes where he's driving around in the racetrack or whatever. You're like, this sucks. Men on a Mission, their joint, the Earthquake joints. One of my favorite ones that I saw recently was the Power and Grace promo that he did for Alundra Blaze. And it's a mixture of her being in the gym, but also her in like lingerie and stuff. So it's like she's in the gym working out and she's in the ring doing stuff. And then there would be a flash to her with like a fur coat on or at the beach or whatever. So you get the mixture of she's tough and beautiful. You know, the power and grace of Alundra Blaze. This was, I think she had just won the title and they started doing these vignettes for her. And you're like, this was before they really put the gas on Alundra Blaze too, because her WrestleMania match is about to get canceled. Oddly enough, I was watching Superstars and her opponent was announced as being Debbie Combs, and I was like, who the fuck is Debbie Combs? I don't know who that is. So I googled her and seen that she was supposed to wrestle Alundra Blaze at WrestleMania 10, but she got pulled. I don't think a reason was given why. But you started seeing that there were more female announcers. Bonnie Blackstone was was not a commentator, but an announcer. She did the interviews and stuff. She used to be the wife of a wrestler, not a wrestler, I think a wrestling promoter. Yeah, Bonnie Blackstone. There's other female ring announcers. You see, like, Vince was a little bit more progressive at the time. You know, you can see a lot of the old WWF stuff that you see today there, but you see that Vince was a little bit more progressive. There's more women on the show than you think. They were still as obsessed with showing the crowd, especially when Undertaker was in the ring or Nails or somebody like that. They would make sure to get the reaction of the children. It was great. It was great. Like, it's fantastic. One of the things that kind of disappointed me, though, they started doing this guest ring announcer gimmick where every week on Superstars, a kid from the crowd would be picked to do the ring announcing. And they were in, I don't know what city they were in, but they picked this girl. She was 13. She looked like she was about 13 or 14, and she was black. And she got in the ring, and she could not read. It was so bad that it was not funny. It was sad. She was looking at it gave her the cue card, and she's looking at the cue card, and she's like, weighing 317 pounds. And then she said, what's this word? And I was looking like, oh no. Why would the first one that comes out here who can't fucking read be a black girl? They got people out there 7 years old, 6 years old, talking into the microphone. They're whispering in their ear and stuff like that. They didn't give them a cue card. They're whispering in the ear. But she's old enough to be able to read. And she never did get to that name. She never did get that name. It was Diesel, by the way. She was announcing a Diesel match. It was awful. And I looked, because immediately afterward, Vince was like, she's hooked on phonics. And I was like, I wonder if people, went back and watched this and was like, Vince is racist because he said the black girl was hooked on phonics and she can't read. And I looked it up and nobody ever said anything about it. Nobody said anything. So that means that I also wanted to put it in create a short with her not being able to read. But I was like, I don't want to embarrass her because they actually used her name on TV and I don't want to do that. But it was awful, bro. Like, that was bad. I don't mind the special guest ring announcement. I think it's a cool gimmick because it gave kids an opportunity. They came out there and they merchandise. They wearing like these oversized Bret Hart shirts and these oversized Razor Ramon shirts and stuff. And they're, getting to ring and they're not always getting to ring announce fun stuff. Sometimes it's, the Steiner brothers. Sometimes it's Bret Hart, which, they can't even get it out, which is Bret Hart. Because Bret's the most over guy on the roster at that point. Next to Undertaker, he's the most over guy on the roster. But, it's fun. It's a fun product, even though it's trash in some ways. Like Doink and Dink are annoying as hell. It don't last forever. It's not that long. Doink segments are not that long. Bam Bam Bigelow and his love for Luna Vachon, which was hilarious. But you sit back and you do get kind of pissy. Like, why wasn't Bam Bam being used better? Like, Bam Bam ruled. He was being used worse than Crush. I hate fucking Crush. Why was Crush at WrestleMania and Bam Bam wasn't? I may watch WrestleMania 10 when this is over, because I still got some stuff to do before I go to bed. But yeah, I spent like, I don't know, far too long talking about old Superstars episodes that nobody's going to watch. Please go watch Superstars, please, pretty please. The thing is, they were sillier than the new generation things, like, because this was supposed to be the more mature product. This was supposed to be the more mature product, and it ends up being the most garbage product. The Attitude Era in some ways was more childish than the New Generation era. But New Generation era, I'm telling you, it's a sweet spot for me. It's I love it so much. It's hard to tell people how something can be very mid and it could be better, but you still enjoy it. Like, I still enjoy like the mixture of families in the audience, how they get so excited for just to see somebody. Like, Bret Hart's about to wrestle a jobber. They don't care. They're about ready to jump out their seat because Bret Hart came out there. They're in awe of Yokozuna. They used to do fun stuff too with like the commercials. Like the tagline is unbelievable. So they did this really cool commercial of Yokozuna terrorizing Japanese people. Like, he's Godzilla. Like, he comes up and towers over the buildings, and the little Japanese people are like, ah, and they're running around and stuff. It's like, that shit was fun. That shit rules, actually. They did another one where this guy's pretending to be various wrestlers. Like, he's pretending to be Razor Ramon and Randy Savage and everything. And then the real Randy Savage shows up and steals his girlfriend or whatever. It's really funny. It's really, really funny stuff. What's your thoughts on LOD being buried in 98 and Hawk draw a suicide angle? I hate that angle. It is one of the worst in WWE. The worst thing about the angle is they never finished it. There was no way for you to. The only way for you to fix that angle was for Hawk to come out of it, and he never did. So, like, did you really fix it? What did you do? except humiliate the guy. You know, draw puke as another one. You know, why does he exist? You want to talk about the Goon and Who and Duke the Dumpster Drosy? All right, the Headbangers. There's two dudes in skirts. You know, it's ridiculous shit. It's just stupid, stupid stuff. Stupid stuff. Um, Interestingly enough, another discussion I had on Twitter was people swearing up and down that Shane Douglas was ripped off by Triple H, and you know he stole everything from Shane Douglas. I'm like, okay, so specifically, what did he steal? The guy showed me a picture of Shane Douglas and Triple H wearing the same hat. Um, Sean Stasiak was meat. Yep, they the Pretty Mean Sisters, PMS, the Pretty Mean Sisters, and meat. Sean Stasiak trying to tackle The Rock every week, you know, and basically Tom and Jerry and himself every week. It was just ridiculous, man. Um, it's beaver cleavage. Yeah, there's a lot of just attitude era shit. Like, I don't understand. Like, everybody talks about the attitude era. They almost always Rock, Austin, Rock, Austin, Rock. Like, that wasn't the whole show, bro. It wasn't. Like, yeah, Mankind was Jerry. He was cool. Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, they were cool. But then you had, you know, Doug Furnace and Philip LaFawn. They suck. Oh, they're great wrestlers. They're boring. Right? They're boring. They sucked. I like Wild Man Mark Merrow. I don't like Marvelous Mark Merrow. He sucks. Wild Man Mark Merrow was at least fun in the ring. You know, at least he had somewhat of a personality. You know? Right to censor, yeah. It was so bad, bro. The cacophony, the Kyantai segments, the Mean Street Posse. You know, it's filled with dumb shit, and most people can't even. The only thing I can say is that it wasn't. At least it wasn't bland. Like, the problem we have today is too much blandness, too many Garganos, and again, Undertaker saying people that don't understand character work. That's the problem today. Back then, people had characters, but they were shit, and the writing was shit, and they literally just existed, or they existed for a character arc but never got written off, like the Mean Street Posse. They existed for a purpose, but then they were never really written off, and they were wrestling in like slacks and stuff. It was stupid. They never evolved. Never went anywhere. Nothing ever came out of it. The oddities, you know, it was. We booked them so they could do the stuff with their arms, and we could have the Insane Clown Posse music play. That's we put Earthquake in a mask, in a tight T-shirt, and then we put Kurgan out there to dance. Oh, but Shanky, they so stupid. They doing big gimmicks. Kurgan out there dancing. The Truth Commission, where Kurgan came from, terrible. Don Callis was involved with that. Everything about this shit. Los Boricuas was in 1998. Los Boricuas? You know, DOA? Ken Shamrock's sister that he ended up fucking. Weird. Just weird stuff, man. Just really weird shit. This the Attitude Era, man. Look, some of that stuff was fun. I thought the Pillman Goldust angle, I liked that. Kind of humiliating to Goldust, but I liked it. It was based on reality. It was fun. Then Pillman died, so that killed that angle, you know. But so not everything was garbage, under the sun. But the hot potato one of the Intercontinental title where it didn't matter. Literally, try finding somebody who cared about the Intercontinental Champion in 1998. Nobody cared. You know, nobody cared about who the Intercontinental Champion was. Nobody cared about who the European Champion was. You know, they were exchanging the world title way too often. You know, too often for my liking anyway. You know, so, and then they started doing stuff after I stopped watching it. They started doing like the Union. They were doing the New Blood over in WCW. Like, who the fuck wants to watch that stuff, man? All I want is to watch wrestlers form a union against Vince in WWE on screen. Like, I saw it in the video game. Like, that's where I found out that the union even existed, because it was in a video game. And that's how I kept up with most of the wrestling at the time. Was my friends started getting the video games. He would buy WWE just like he'd buy Madden. Um, he would just buy the WWE, and I would play those games, and I would get caught up on what happened. So that's why I learned about Billy and Chuck, and Billy Gunn have a singles career, and Rikishi being an Intercontinental Champion and stuff like that. I'm like, huh? Okay. So, all right. You say so, boss? Oh yeah, of course, the Job Squad. I mean, just meta commentary shit. The Job Squad. Come on, you know that's a Vince Russo idea. How meta? That's too meta. And it's put all ECW guys in it too. Al Snow and Too Cold Scorpio and shit. Like, come on, man. It was weird, bro. It's hard to explain. Like, I don't begrudge people for liking the past. I like the past too. It's just that I'm honest, and honestly, I think a lot of that stuff was trash. Like, the pay-per-views might have been solid because they actually built it, but the TV was not good. Oh yeah, the NWA Invasion stuff. Oh, that shit was not good. They did the Smoky Mountain stuff in '93 Superstars with the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies, and they didn't do too much on Superstars. They just I think each one probably had 2 matches. So technically, the Rock and Roll Express did work in WWF. It was just they were working for Jim Cornette at the time, and he was shooting angles on WWF TV. But we haven't gotten to the worst part of Superstars yet, which is when I'm watching it. Is WrestleMania 10 hasn't happened yet. It's going to go downhill after WrestleMania 10. I already know it. It's going to still be fun though, because we still got to get to Diesel and Razor and the Intercontinental title. They're building that stuff up now, and that's the one thing that I used to love is they started building up WrestleMania matches in December. Shawn Michaels shows up with the fake Intercontinental title at Survivor Series, I think, and they don't have a match. Him and Razor do not have a match on TV until WrestleMania. So from November to April, they're occasionally cutting promos on each other. Shawn's just carrying around his Intercontinental title, talking about he's the real champion, even though Razor is defending it against like IRS or whatever. And he's still carrying around his belt. It's almost as if they know what they're doing. We know we're not having this match until April or late March. It's Brett and Owen. They took their time with that. It took Undertaker being written off TV for a long time. They built that up. They took their time with that. They even went as much as say Undertaker never lost a casket match and all that kind of stuff. It's just so different. It's such a different product. It's such a tremendously different product. The only thing that was, you could tell when things weren't done right because it comes across like shit, like Lex Luger's babyface turn. You could tell they didn't put a lot of effort into that. Like, they literally, Hulk Hogan left, and then literally like the next week they turned Lex Luger babyface. They didn't even put any effort behind it. But the weird thing is, Luger really did get over. Let's say you don't want to believe the sound. Let's say the sound is, people are sweetening the crowd. You can look at the crowd and tell people are very, very excited about Lex Luger. But the issue that I had was with Lex Luger's promos. Oh my God, is he awful? The way he the way he cut his promo, especially when he was a narcissist. Excuse me, Mr. Perfect. It seems that you are going to have a very difficult time today. I'm sorry to hear that. I was kind of like, ugh. You could tell that he was more mocking everything than actually being involved in it. And that's how you could tell he was a failure, because he was bucking the system. And you just kept saying to yourself, like, man, Luger had it all. You go back and watch some of that Made in America Lex Luger stuff. He had it all. The crowd was there with him. Now the crowd loved Bret more. Don't get me wrong; they were definitely more into Bret. But if he'd have put the belt on Luger, nobody would have been upset. Nobody would have been mad. They might have been disappointed because it wasn't Bret, but they would not have been mad. Okay, could have put the belt on anybody at that point, though, dog. Because the roof was coming off that joint for Undertaker, Bret, Luger, um, and Razor. The place was coming unglued, and Macho Man. It was coming unglued for those guys. And Macho Man didn't even wrestle that much. So you know they was going nuts for him. You know, I just watched him have a very short, kind of slow match with Rick the Model Martel. Didn't know they even had a match before. It was good. It could have done better. If it was like in 1990, it would have been better. But it's 1994. It's not that far off, and it was still pretty good. Rick Martel isn't doing a lot on these shows either. He's still there though. He's just not doing a lot. It put him in a tag team with Crush for some reason, and then they got into it afterwards. And I thought they were about to turn the model babyface. Then he was wrestling Randy Savage like 2 weeks later or something like that. I'm like, okay. I thought he was about to turn babyface, but nope. I don't know if Tito is still there though. I ain't seen him yet. I ain't seen him in a while. El Matador. But oh yeah, I forgot the crowd going crazy for Tatanka. Bro, you think Tatanka was gonna be the fucking world champion, bro? You hear the people are just up like, oh hell yeah, they're doing the whole tomahawk chop and everything. I got chills from a Tatanka entrance today. Literally today. He was wrestling a job guy. And Vince was talking, like he was chatterboxing about something. And then Tatanka's music just hit. And people just went ape shit. And I was like, does people care about Tatanka? This is after Tatanka's loss, by the way. You know, he's already been beaten by Ludwig Borga. You know, so him losing didn't even bother them. They didn't care. You know, like it was great. It's great. It's great shit, man. I'm telling you. You can't beat it. Can't beat it with stick. Virgil is still there though. I don't know why, but he's still there. But I'm telling you, man, like the way they portrayed people was so much better. You know, they come in, they get wins. They don't come in and just start losing immediately. They don't book people to be too silly. At least not immediately. The Body Donnas, they didn't come into '95, but Chris Candido. Everybody likes Chris Candido except me. I don't like Chris Candido. He's boring. He can work though, but I just think he's kind of a boring guy. This is unfortunately he quit wrestling to take care of his family in '96. Do you consider him a what could have been wrestler? No, because when he turned him heel, that was kind of it. If they had not turned Tatanka heel, yes. When they turned him heel, though, I think that killed it. You know, because heel Tatanka wasn't not over. I don't think people really cared about heel Tatanka. But as a babyface, oh my god, he was on fire. Darren Gordon has done seen some 30-second Mr. Perfect squashes that were pure joy. Ah, yes, absolutely. He had so much fun as a babyface doing squash matches at the time. God, he was having a blast, bro. Especially before King of the Ring, when it was leading up to him and Bret. He was going out there having squash matches, just killing it. He looked tremendous. He looks fantastic. I'm telling you, like these watching Superstars are making me watch the pay-per-views because it got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to watch Superstars episodes back to back to back to back. I'm not watching none of the shows. And then I started watching them. Like I blew through Royal Rumble '93 without watching the pay-per-view. But then I got to, WrestleMania. And I was like, I've been watching Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez interact. I kind of want to see the match. like, I kind of want to see this. You know, I know it's terrible. Like I already know it's terrible, but I'm watching the interaction and I'm lost in the moment, and I'm like, I kind of want to see this. Like I'm watching the Mega Maniacs. Hogan and Bruce the Barber Beefcake build up to the story with Money Inc. I kind of want to see this. I kind of want to see this match, and that's what it's supposed to do. You do angles and stuff like that, and it makes you want to watch the product. And so now I'm like, I watched Royal Rumble '94 because I've been watching everything that led up to it, except Raw. I didn't watch Raw. I didn't watch Wrestling Challenge or anything like that either. But Wrestling Challenge was more of a B show. Raw was the B show at that time too. But I was watching the main show where they were building up the product, and I wanted to see it. So I'm probably going to end up watching WrestleMania 10. I probably haven't watched that whole show in a long time. But when I get to WrestleMania 10 episodes, I'm definitely going to watch it. Prime Pamela Anderson was in WWE at the height of the Baywatch in '95. Yeah, that's true. She didn't really do much. They had Carmen Electra. They had her too. At a sleepy WrestleMania, that was WrestleMania 11. That's one of them. You don't really pay too much attention to those WrestleManias. 9, 10, 11, and 12 don't really get a lot of heat. Nobody pays that close attention to those. Those are new generation era WrestleManias. And about 13, we was in the Attitude Era. They was doing different shit at that point. Even though Sultan was there. Quang, for instance, Quang debuted at the Royal Rumble. Then he had his debut 3 weeks later on Superstars. You're like, what? Quang having his debut? Like, Vince, Quang was at the Royal Rumble. Okay? You didn't have enough talent, so you put the guy in the Royal Rumble. Barry Horowitz versus Skip, who got over and who benefited the most? Well, clearly Barry Horowitz, because Skip wasn't doing much of anything, and it kind of killed his character to lose to Barry Horowitz. But Barry Horowitz is a job guy. He's a job guy in Superstars that I'm watching now, though. Top Dog says nobody talked about the Hogan era or the New Generation era when I was growing up. It was Attitude Era. That's because it was the most popular. I mean, it makes sense. It's the most popular. I don't deny that. But let me tell you, those 1980s WWF shows, tremendous. These 1990s WWF shows, they're very, very good. Bro, I wanted to put this Ric Flair promo that he did. I wanted to put that shit up on YouTube so bad. The Ric Flair episode the Damaged Goods promo. Just put in Ric Flair Damaged Goods into your YouTube when this is over. And listen to Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect and Bobby the Brain Heenan. They are a trio of assholes. That is so funny. I watched that promo like 4 or 5 times. It was that humorous. Like, as much as people don't like that Ric Flair, it was Vince turning up elements of Ric Flair to the next level. Ric Flair being obsessed with Elizabeth, saying that he was her favorite stud. She was mine before she was yours. And then Mr. Perfect with the ad libs in the backstage, with the ad libs or whatever, cackling and trolling. It was great. It was phenomenal. I don't see how you can hate that. You may not have liked, the Ric Flair push because it wasn't as strong as you may have wanted it to be. He didn't let Ric Flair run with the belt as long as he wanted to and all that kind of stuff. But Flair, the presentation of Flair was on point. He always looked nice. He was always talking about women, and he wasn't as over the top. Like, he wasn't shouty, screaming, raising the roof, limousine riding, jet flying Ric Flair. He was more subdued. But boy, was he was fucking hilarious. He was great. I hate that Ric Flair is not in WWF anymore at this point because he was so much fun. But his match with Kurt Hennig was tremendous. His last match before he left. It was It was so much fun watching the lead up to WrestleMania. What was it? 8? Yeah, WrestleMania 8. It was so much fun. The doctored photo, just like the Jeff Jarrett stuff is fun. With him complaining about country music, industry and all that kind of stuff. Like it's fun. There's elements of like you could tell Vince was had his frustrations with certain things and he was putting it in the show. Like the Repo Man was clearly Vince being upset about certain things. IRS. You could tell Vince was upset about something when IRS came on the screen. You know, you could tell Vince was upset. And IRS was that one guy who just hung around forever. He never really got over, but he was always there. And I appreciate IRS a lot more now than I did. I hated IRS when I was a kid. Oh my god, he was Baron Corbin. And how I feel about Baron Corbin now is how I felt about IRS when I was in like '94. I cringed every time he came on screen. I was like, oh my god, oh, and I still kind of get that little bit of that. Oh shit, it's IRS. He's the only guy in the world that doesn't have a theme song. He just comes out to booze. You know, he just carries a briefcase and he comes out to booze. But another thing that used to be fun is they used to do fun stuff with like the job guys. So they did an angle on Monday Night Raw. I wish I would have watched Raw. I may have to start watching Raw and Superstars. But they did an angle where IRS stole Razor Ramon's gold, the gold that goes around his neck. He stole it, put it in his briefcase. So IRS is about to wrestle a job guy. The job guy actually gets the drop on IRS, knocks him out of the ring, runs him into the ring post. Well, IRS more than likely runs himself into the ring post. And the job guy looks at the crowd with the briefcase like, should I open it? And the crowd's like, yeah, yeah, open it. And so because he's incompetent, the job guy's trying to open IRS's briefcase, and then IRS recovers and kicks him in the back of the head and everything. But it was so fun. Like, because the story is that you're not supposed to know that IRS actually stole Razor Ramon's gold, even though you do know he stole it. You're not supposed to be able to prove it because it's in the briefcase and the briefcase is locked. So, the job guy almost opened it, and IRS ended up killing the guy I think his finish was like a clothesline. It was so stupid. But it was fun. They did fun shit with job guys all the time. Doink introduced Dink against a job guy, and Dink was running around the job guy in circles. Then he parked behind him, and Doink pushed him, and he flipped over the. It was so dumb. Dink sprayed the guy with a flower. It was ridiculous, bro. But they were doing it to job guys, and they weren't doing it to like other roster dudes. It was fun because they were making the job matches fun. Just like the Steiner brothers would come out there where they would annihilate somebody, and it would be fun. It'd be great. The Quebecers, they would come out there, annihilate somebody, and it'd be great. The Beverly brothers, they'd drop somebody's head into the mat, because they almost always botched their finish, and it was great. It was fun. These job guys took a beating. They took an absolute beating. Evil Doink was tremendous. Evil Doink was tremendous. He had the stump puller as a finisher. He was a babyface. He used the whoopee cushion. But the stump puller, where you sit on your shoulders and pull that leg up, man, that sucks as a finisher. That has to hurt. But he was so good. And they kept doing the double doinks and the triple doinks and everything. They did that shit for months. I didn't know how long they was doing that stuff. And they were doing like the double doinks and the triple doinks and stuff like that for a long time. And you could this is a funny thing. Crush was getting super pushed at the time. Like he was beating everybody. He was like a number one contender for the Intercontinental title and everything. Like he's almost beating Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental belt and all that kind of stuff. Doink cost him the match. And then after Crush lost to Shawn Michaels, it was just like all downhill after that. It was like Crush couldn't buy a fucking win unless it was a job guy. But he was getting humiliated by Doink pretty much every damn week. And it was fucking hilarious. It was absolutely tremendous. It was tremendous. The two doinks, then a prosthetic arm doink. Then they had the doinks laughing on the Trons. It was great. What era do you think was better top to bottom from storyline? Oh, it was the 80s. The 80s, man. From top to bottom storylines, yeah, the 80s. Let's say 86 to 91. 86 to 91, 92. Tremendous. The George Scott eras. When George Scott and Pat Patterson was doing most of the work. And then when he hit, Pat Patterson was gone because of the Ring Boy scandal. Then it was like, okay, trouble in paradise. Trouble in paradise. Now Vince is left pretty much on his own, and he hadn't called in Jim Cornette yet, and it wasn't looking good. Vince was left with, I think Bruce was Bruce still there? I don't know. I don't know if Bruce was still there or not. But when Pat Patterson lost, his kind of authority, that was it. And I think it happened at WrestleMania 8. I think that's when it was it, because that's when Jake Roberts wanted to take Pat Patterson's spot, and he didn't get it, so he decided to throw a pity party and refused to do a job before he left. But yeah, when Pat left, that's when shit hit the wall. So wouldn't the Attitude Era be more mainstream? Well, yeah, clearly it was, because they sold more merchandise. It was more people selling more merchandise back then. Vegeta Lover 92 says, I watched the China A&E special. I cried. Ooh. It was emotional. It was very emotional. It was very, very emotional. Apostle of JBL, what is happening with the banks? I'm hearing stuff like the economy is about to collapse. Well, a bank in California had a bank run on it, and it collapsed because they don't have enough money. But it was a bank that serviced mostly tech companies and venture capitalists and stuff like that. It's still going to be pretty bad. I think Roku got like 30% of their income tied up into that bank. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, a lot of companies. Either they're going to end up bailing it out or it's over. And a lot of that stuff is uninsured, which means that the federal government is not going to replace that money. So it may lead to other bank failures. It probably most likely will. So it's going to be tough. I don't know if the whole economy is going to collapse, but it ain't looking good. I can tell you that much. You had a huge bank just collapse out of nowhere. Not good. It's a lot of people about to lose a lot of income, but it's California. What can you say? California doing their thing. I think the bank is settled in Santa Monica, and I forget what it's called. I think it's what's that bank called? SVB. I forget what SVB. Silicon Valley Bank. Who is the most overrated wrestler today? Kenny Omega, easily, or the Bucks. Pick one. All right. It's 10:35. I've been longer than I thought I was going to, and we're way off to talking about Creed. Are you a fan of The Rock in his heyday? Yeah, I was always a fan of The Rock. I just kind of got frustrated when it became clear that The Rock was just going to humiliate everybody and not really allow you to get too much heat. Even though The Rock is like the guy who never really won, like Raj Geary was talking about that today. Like outside of beating Hogan, The Rock doesn't have a huge WrestleMania win under his belt. He pretty much has a losing record at WrestleMania. Like a big staple WrestleMania win, like a crowning achievement. The Rock is the only top guy that never had one. Pretty much everybody from Bret and Shawn and Undertaker and Austin and Cena and hell, even Randy Orton and those guys have won titles at WrestleMania and be crowned the top guy. The Rock never had that moment, but The Rock did get to beat Hulk Hogan. So I think that was his moment. I think that was when he got the torch. He didn't need the belt. He had the people, and I think that was the best way to put it when it comes to The Rock. But I was a fan of The Rock in his heyday. I would watch a Rock promo or segment or something like that right now. I just felt like, he had way too much leeway to bury people. And it killed a lot of people's pushes, that they had to deal with The Rock. Because the character was just allowed to just run over people. Like he completely obliterated Billy Gunn. Like I'm not saying that Billy Gunn was going to be something. I don't believe that. But what could he be after The Rock and put him through the shredder? What could he do? How could you salvage that? You know, it's similar to what they just did with John Cena and Austin Theory. It's like, okay, so what? How are you going to fix this? You know, like how are you going to fix that? But The Rock did have some tremendous matches, especially with Triple H, as Vegeta Lover 92 says. I like their strap match. That's one of my favorite matches. That's my favorite Triple H Rock match. Was their strap match? Um, but at least the Triple H won WrestleMania 2000. He walked out of with the belt. He also walked out of WrestleMania 17 with the belt. 18. He walked out of 18 with the belt. Rock never walked out of WrestleMania with a belt, except the Intercontinental title. That's because he beat the Sultan. I think that was the only time he ever. I think he even lost the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. I think that made it a first to decision, but he pretty much never won at WrestleMania. But yeah, I like The Rock. I'm not going to say that he was garbage or anything like that. I just didn't like the amount of power the character had. He kind of just took over the show. It was the same thing with Triple H, where it just kind of felt like it was the Triple H show. And from like 2002 to like 2006, it was like if you Triple H or bust. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't like Triple H like that. It felt like that was The Rock too. And like when Austin went down, it was like, here's The Rock, here's more Rock, here's more Rock. You like The Rock, huh? Here's more of him. I'm like, oh God, fuck, come on. If Brett didn't retire, would he have come back to get his win back from Shawn? I don't think he would have won a war with Shawn. Shawn probably would have stayed in retirement if Brett had come back. I'll tell you, he'd have waited for Brett to leave. He'd have waited for Brett to retire again. Again, Brett was in his 40s when he got kicked in the head, though. I mean, when he bumped his head. However that went. Brett was in his 40s already. So he wasn't going to last too much longer anyway. I think he probably wanted to come back anyway because he was still gonna be mad at Vince. He wanted to come back anyway. I don't think. You know, Vegeta Love 92 was tired of Brett. I love Brett. Brett was the top wrestler in the world when I was a young kid. I love me some Bret Hart. You know, he's tremendous. He's really good. Now that you put it like that, I kind of see why guys like Bruno hated the Attitude Era. Well, yeah, it was trash. You know, it was trash TV. It wasn't the kind of, like people didn't like the silly new generation stuff. They thought it was silly and it was goofy, but it wasn't harmful. Like Attitude Era, shit just became like pollution. You know, it was everywhere with the crotch chopping and everything. It was nutty. You know, the If You Smell and Poontang Pie and drinking beer and stunners and people pulling guns on each other. It was crazy. Like I don't know how you defend the product when people are pulling guns on it. You know, that's nuts. They liked pink and black but never cared for wrestling. I'm a wrestling fan though. I like wrestling matches. I just, you know, it's unfortunate that today's matches rarely get me that entertained. You know, because they're almost always the same. Whether it's WWE or AEW, it's almost always the same. There's very little wrestling in wrestling matches. Like Meiko Satomura versus Roxanne Perez. I actually watched that match again, and it was a solid match, like bell to bell wrestling match, solid. Compare that to some of the other shit, like people are just starting the match with flippity doodahs and then 100 flippity doodahs throughout the show. It's like, what did I think on the thug scene? I hated that shit. I didn't like the Cena gimmick. I skipped most of it, by the way. Like I came back when he was doing the chain gang thing. But when I went back and watched the old rap Cena, I was like, ugh, no. I just don't like rap gimmicks. And plus, a lot of it was Attitude Era stuff. Him talking about his dick, him talking about people sucking his dick or sucking his balls or something like that. It was like, yeah. It was along the same lines of it lacked humor. Like the Val Venus stuff was sexual, but I thought it was clever at the very least. Like my favorite line probably ever uttered on WWF television is "I came, I saw, I came again." You know, like that's very fucking clever. Did you like the Marine Chain Gang gimmick? No, I hated John Cena. I didn't like John Cena until maybe 2000, maybe 11. You know, maybe 11. I think I liked Cena in 2011. You know, I didn't really like Cena. I was I was as anti Cena as everybody else. Only thing was I just wasn't as ridiculous as people who you know who were kind of on that. I'd rather watch AJ Styles because I was like, oh no, not AJ Styles, anybody but him. You know, like oh no, like, do. Did I like Legend Killer? Oh yeah, I love Legend Killer Randy Orton. I thought he was very good. Legend Killer Randy Orton was very fine. All right, Mongo doesn't love the acclaimed. I like the acclaimed more than I'm willing. I like them a little bit. I like that they fought to get themselves over, but I'm not a big threat guy on those on the acclaimed. You know, I'm not a big acclaimed guy. I just feel like rap like they've been doing rap gimmicks since 2000 or 1993. That's when Men on a Mission came in, and there was some rap gimmicks before that. You know, so it was just just ugh. You feel sorry for Swerve and Keith Lee. That's unfortunate because I don't feel sorry for those fucking guys. Why should you feel sorry for those dudes? That's what I want to know. All right, y'all. It's 10:45. It's time for me to wrap this thing up. I will be putting the Discord in probably in the description, or I'll put it in the community tab. Um, I'll also find a way to share this story that I talked about for you guys. I'll find a way to share it so that you can read it at your leisure. Um, thank you guys for your time. 2 hours and 42 minutes. Some of you guys have been here the whole time. But I gotta get some water and do some other things before going to bed. Yeah, scissoring is very cringe, but at least it's something that's got him over. All right, peace out, y'all. See you guys later.